to have him back. He's defending a majority of just over 10,000 in South Thanet. I mean, in normal times, that would be considered a pretty safe seat. But obviously, these days, we've seen the Labour Party overturn majorities far bigger than that in by-elections. So it might be quite tough for him. But I think having this incredibly inspiring story and the inspirational way that he's dealt with what's happened to him will hopefully give him a bit of a boost. OK, Olivia, thank you. Let's talk to founder and joint CEO at the UK Sepsis Trust, Dr Ron Daniels. Very good to see you this morning. Why is it with sepsis we sort of hear very little about it in day-to-day life until there's either a big story or a big tragedy? Why is that? Is it common?
Well, it's astonishing, isn't it? We have a condition here that affects nearly 250,000 people across the UK each year and claims 48,000 lives. And just for context, breast cancer, and I'm not diminishing how horrible that can be, claims 11,000 lives. So sepsis is 4 times more prolific as a killer. I think the reason we don't hear about it is because it doesn't really belong to any particular speciality of doctors. It touches every aspect of healthcare, and therefore there's no professional group to be championing it, which means it needs an advocacy organisation like ours.
Is it also just incredibly hard to spot and often creeps up on people with very little warning? I mean, my understanding is that it's when your own immune system starts to attack the tissues, but by the time people realise that their temperature isn't just flu or something, they can often be in quite a perilous state.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And my professional background is an intensive care doctor, and I do empathise with the view that it can be really hard to spot. It arises in people of any age, people with whether or not they've got underlying illness, and it can arise as a consequence of any infection. So it presents hugely differently. To get this right demands not only that we have health professionals who are well trained and have access to the right diagnostics to make the diagnosis, but also members of the public who've heard of sepsis, know it's an emergency and know when and how to access healthcare.
So what do we do? I mean, what do we look out for? And at what point do you say this needs to be looked at urgently?
Well, you mentioned that in the early stages it can look a bit like flu. And in that situation, it's trust your instinct. You've probably had infections before. You know what it feels like. But if something doesn't feel right, and particularly if you've never felt so unwell before, go to 111, make an appointment, see your GP, and just ask, could it be sepsis? But if you're concerned something is devastatingly wrong, there are 6 key symptoms to look for, and they spell the word sepsis. S for slurred speech or confusion, E for extreme pain in the muscles or joints, P for passing no urine, no water in a day, S for severe breathlessness, I for it feels like I'm going to die, and people really do say that, and then the final S for skin that's mottled or discoloured or very pale. Any one of those 6 in the context of infection, it's go straight to A&E.
OK. Yeah, it's worth knowing. Dr Daniels, good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Heck.
Oh, my goodness me. I interviewed Jason Watkins once, the actor about his 2-year-old daughter, Maud, and he tucked her up into bed. They thought she had a horrible cold. She had a bit of a temperature, and in the morning they found her in a bed and she passed away. And he's been incredibly brave. It was only in 2011, but he's been incredibly brave talking about it and trying to raise the profile of sepsis. But for any parent, you know, we've so often had kids with high temperatures. It is so frightening, isn't it? But good advice there, spells out the word sepsis. Any concerns, just go straight to 111 or to A&E.
Right, Jeff Kitchen has been named as the British man who died when the aircraft he was on was hit by severe turbulence. That was on a flight from London to Singapore.
Airport officials believe the 73-year-old man might have suffered a heart attack. More than 50 people were hurt, 7 of them critically, after mostly sustaining head injuries.
Let's talk to travel correspondent for The Independent, Simon Calder. Good to see you, Simon, this morning, though it's awful to be talking about such a situation. I mean, is it very unusual to have turbulence this severe?
It certainly is. Now, turbulence, which can happen either because you're flying somewhere near some storm clouds or because you are simply in an area which suddenly has some very violent updrafts or downdrafts, is a very worrying phenomenon. It happens about twice a day on average to the extent that a passenger will be injured. I'm speaking to you from Seoul in Korea, and on my flight over here, we're just passing over near Beijing in China when suddenly the aircraft lurched. Now, because they weren't in the middle of the meal service or anything, there weren't people moving around, but even so, they had to appeal for medical people on board to treat a passenger who was injured. This particular event, you have a combination of extremely violent turbulence, although any reports you've seen that the aircraft plummeted 6,000 feet in 2 minutes are wrong. Yes, there was a lot of movement. Yes, it was extremely distressing, and so many injuries, as well as the sad loss of Mr. Kitchen. But the combination of that and the fact that it was 90 minutes out of Singapore, as a result of which the crew were up and about dealing with breakfast. People were getting up, going to use the washrooms or whatever, an awful lot of people there. So tragic circumstances. And, well, clearly it needs to be properly investigated to find out what the sequence of events were. And I think it could also lead possibly to some rather different ways of flying. I mean, you'll be aware that generally pilots might say, oh, keep your seatbelt loosely fastened while you're we advise you to do that when you're seated. And of course, when the seatbelt light actually goes on, you have to put your seatbelt on. But I think we could get to a point where it is absolutely normal, as with a car, to be wearing your seatbelt at all times, unless you are getting up and stretching your legs or going to the washroom or whatever. So that you would always assume that everybody is not going to be particularly harmed during severe turbulence, even though it is, of course, very, very distressing.
Yeah, I don't know if either of you have ever experienced sort of moderately severe turbulence. I have over the Andes in South America, where my bottom left the seat, and that was frightening enough. But I just, to be honest, assumed that was because it was a mountainous region and, you know, hot air. But I do believe that the number of incidents of this have doubled since the 70s, and that sort of severe turbulence is on the rise as we're seeing temperatures rise as well. So I suppose people do need to think twice about all of this. And interesting again about the head injuries in this. I mean, my instinct was, do we need to be wearing helmets? You know, does there need to be more serious questions about safety on board planes?
Well, no, I mean, a lot of the damage on those very shocking images that you've been showing to the ceilings and so on were caused by people flying out of their seats because the aircraft suddenly drops. People, inertia means that you stay where you are, which means that you're going to shoot upwards, which is partly why there's so much damage to that aircraft. But this is happening at a time when aviation has never been safer. Last year, there were no fatal accidents involving passenger jets in normal scheduled service. So amazingly safe outside the aircraft, and turbulence is never going to bring down a modern plane. But I think attention will now shift to what happens inside the aircraft, also with the cabin crew. I mean, this counts as serious industrial injuries. So there will need to be an awful lot of studying about what exactly was known about the weather. And also you could see different procedures where, for example, not all the cabin crew are out and about at the same time, because obviously their job is to help people out of the aircraft in an emergency. And from what I've been reading and hearing and viewing, it seems as though a lot of them were simply not able to do that because they were badly injured too. Awful circumstances. And all we can do is what aviation always does, which is learn from past tragedies and try to make flying that bit safer.
Yeah, absolutely. Simon, thanks very much indeed. It is terrifying. I was on a plane once that took off in a storm. Every other plane had been grounded, and our airline decided they were going to take off. And we got to 4,000 feet and dropped 2,000 feet in an air pocket. I mean, and I was actually sat next to a pilot who said, helpfully, I thought we were going to die.
Oh, that's good. I think as I've got older, I've become a more nervous flyer. I don't know if that's just getting older and you become more aware of your mortality, or if it's the job and that we see all of these horror stories all the time. But I definitely like flying less and less, and all this talk of more turbulence is not encouraging. But apparently if you're a nervous flyer, just as Simon was saying, it's never been safer. So you don't need to panic yet, but, you know...
Always wear your
seatbelt.
I have to say, I always wear my seatbelt. Always keep it fastened, don't you? Well,
no, and especially because until your child is 2, they sit on your lap. And you've seen the size of my boy. When William was climbing around on top of me, you know, if we didn't need the seatbelt on, I didn't use the seatbelt. Well, I might have done if I'd have seen this story, but it's difficult for little ones. And the children, if they didn't have seatbelts on in that situation, must have just been like footballs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just awful.
It is scary, but as Simon says, you've got to learn from it, and we've got to learn from it as passengers as well, and just do whatever we can to be aware of what could happen. Right, it's 17 minutes past 6. Let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom this morning. A former Royal Marine who was accused of spying for the Hong Kong Intelligence Service has died in unexplained circumstances in a park in Berkshire. 37-year-old Matthew Trinkets was charged with offences under the National Security Act and appeared in court last week. Police officers were called to Grenfell Park in Maidenhead at about 5:15 on Sunday. A police cordon's in place as police continue to investigate the death, which is, as Isabel said, being treated as unexplained. Ex-Post Office boss Paula Vanells is set to begin giving evidence at the Post Office inquiry today. She was chief executive there between 2012 and 2019 and will be speaking publicly about what happened to her for the first time in almost a decade, and is expected to reveal what she knew about the wrongly accused sub-postmasters. And the Foreign Secretary Lord Cameron set to go to Albania today to highlight the key role played by the UK in tackling illegal immigration. He's set to hold talks with Albania's Prime Minister, President and Foreign Minister to discuss initiatives to help Albania crack down on gangs smuggling people across the Channel and fueling drugs crime in the UK. Now, this one's for you, Stephen.
Yes, it is. I absolutely love this story. There's some good news for all space geeks and for the future of Britain's space industry, because a rocket test firing on the Shetland Islands has been hailed as a major success. Yeah, in fact, it's gone down so well that the UK apparently could soon become a European leader when it comes to the launching of small satellites. Well, the rocket was launched from the Saxavord spaceport last week, and who better to speak to than Saxavord's very own Head of Operations, Debbie Strang. Oh, yes. Good morning, Debbie. How did it go?
We were really delighted, actually. It was extremely successful, very exciting for all of us watching, and another milestone in this journey that we're on at the moment.
Explain to us what happened, because it was a sort of hot rocket test, wasn't it?
Yeah, so this is Rocket Factory Augsburg, the client we're working with at the moment. Their rocket, obviously, as you can see, that's one stage, is upright on their launch stool. Launch stool's 12 metres high, that's about another 18 metres. And they're firing 4 of their engines in their testing in the build-up to launch.
Goodness me. And what will it take for us to become a European leader in this field? I mean, you know, we seem to be going in the right direction, but how close are we to that title?
Well, we are the first spaceport, vertical launch spaceport in Europe already. So we are the first licensed spaceport in Europe. So to a certain extent, you could say we're already leading the way in launch terms in Europe. We will be the first to launch, and when that happens later this summer.
Oh, I mean, well, in terms of that timetable, I mean, how happy are you? I mean, obviously, this was the testing of a stage 1 part of a rocket. At what point do you then do a test launch and then actually start sending things up?
So this is really for the rocket company to answer, because we're providing the expert support, launch services, the security, all those things are absolutely vital for this launch to take place. That's our role. But Rocket Factory Augsburg are really keeping to the timetable that they've set. So once the bird nesting season is complete, because we won't be doing anything too noisy to disturb the wildlife. They will do some more testing. The actual rocket, when it launches, will have 9 engines on board. So they need to now put the engines while that stage is vertical into place. They'll do another test, we're hoping in July, and really looking for that first launch in August.
Well, good luck. Good luck in August. Let us know how it goes. We will watch with interest and we hope it all goes to plan. Thanks very much. Debbie Strang there speaking to us this morning.
It's fascinating stuff. Because there's a huge market for it. Getting these, these small satellites really are very small, a lot of them. But if, they pay good money, be great for the economy.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic. Well, there we go. Good for the economy, good news all round. Will it be good news in the weather? It was a bit of a washout yesterday, and I think it might be more of the same today. Here's Alex Burkill.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Here's your latest GB News weather update, brought to you by the Met Office on this rather wet Wednesday. Heavy rain's going to spill across many parts of the country, and that does bring the risk of some flooding. It's already a wet start across parts of eastern England, and that rain spilling its way north and westwards across many areas as we go through the day. The rain is really going to be persistent and intense for some of us, and we are likely to see some impacts in association with such wet weather. There will also be some showers around towards the north and also the south of the country, but the sunshine is going to be relatively limited. Temperatures not as high as they have been recently, and under the wet weather it's going to feel pretty unpleasant. Like I said, some showers developing, especially towards the south. Some of these could turn heavy and thundery as we go through the evening. Some frequent lightning, perhaps even some large hail to watch out for here. The greatest cause for concern, though, will be the very wet weather across parts of England and Wales and into southern Scotland too. Here, the persistent rain could lead to totals building up as we go through today into tomorrow in excess of 100 millimetres in some places, especially over the high ground of North Wales. We are likely to see some impacts from it. Towards the northwest of Scotland, there will be some showers as we go through the day, and again these could be a little bit heavy at times too. Through the evening and overnight, the rain does gradually make its way north and westwards, but it takes quite a while to do so, which is why we're going to continue to see those rainfall totals building up and why there is the risk of some impacts, including some flooding. Towards the south, as we go through the night, it should turn largely dry. There may be some clear breaks, but on the whole staying quite cloudy. Temperatures for most not dropping a huge amount. Thursday does look like it will be another wet day for the northern 2/3 of the country. Perhaps the rain not quite as heavy as through today, but nonetheless it is going to be quite a wet picture, and that still brings the risk of some impacts because of the unsettled weather. Drier and perhaps brighter towards the south. Temperatures still not quite as high as they were earlier on in the week, but feeling pleasant enough in any sunshine. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, this is what you need for the summer. Time for the Great British Giveaway. Your chance to win £20,000 in cash. So what would you spend it on, perhaps?
I'd have no trouble spending that.
Oh, that's true.
Absolutely no trouble. Let us know what you would spend it on, but here is how you could make it yours.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yeah, best of luck to you on that one. Still to come, Paul's got all your sports, so don't move a muscle.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers. I agree. And that's precisely what I'll get. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The People's
Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Right, we have all the sports news for you with the broadcaster, Paul Coit. Good morning.
Hello.
All right.
Hello. No, well, yes, you've just picked me to the post or something, but
sorry.
I'll come back to Keeliog. I'll come back to you in a little
Oh, Keeliog.
Keeliog's been in touch this
Oh,
morning.
OK.
Do you want to do that?
Well, she likes my tie, Paul.
Oh, does she really?
Well, I didn't want to do it in front of you because obviously you're not wearing one.
Because I'm tieless.
You are tieless.
But the thing is, you haven't got a pocket square today.
No,
Usually
no,
that goes with it.
No,
right?
I haven't.
You go pocket square, no tie. You go
Yes.
tie, no pocket
I normally have a pocket
It's
square.
like Donny and Marie, a little bit country, a little bit rock and roll. Do you remember that? That's exactly what it was.
Anyway, Keeliog, thank you very much indeed.
You remember Donny and Marie? It was Donny Osmond and his sister Marie.
Of course I do.
At the end of the show, they do a song. And he'd be all rock and roll, because it's Donny Osmond, and then she'd be all country.
He'd be all, to be fair, he was all teeth.
He was all and let's face it, Donny, there wasn't a lot of rock and roll, really, with Tom.
Not really.
There wasn't
no.
really.
Anyway, we better talk Chelsea.
Yes, Mauricio Pochettino.
Yes.
Now, is this a huge shock? I think it's a mistake. I think it's a really bizarre decision. Now, Mauricio Pochettino, then, who was Spurs manager for a long time, went to Chelsea, he was at PSG, and then he went to Chelsea, and things had not got off to a good start, to be honest with you. They'd spent £1 billion on players, and this is Todd Boehly, the American owner, who had been just splashing the cash left, right and centre. Pochettino, and it's taking a while. Now, I've said right here as well a lot of times that it takes Pochettino a while to get settled and for players to understand how his system works. Now, I remember speaking to Kyle Walker when he was playing at Spurs, this is a few years ago, and I'll never forget it. And this is, things weren't working out at the start. And he said, you know, I've got to be honest with you, we can't quite get a handle on this. It's just not working the way we want to. And then it clicked.
Yeah.
And then it started working. Now, with Chelsea, they've won the last 5 games of the season. So although they'd had a bit of a tricky start, finally, it's like you're looking at them, they're playing well, they're doing really well. But it's almost like the decision was made a little while ago. Now, I know that Mauricio wasn't very happy there. There was things that he wasn't too happy about. So it's by mutual agreement. It's issues... The statement is issues were philosophical and related to the dynamics of working within a club structure. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know.
But it's just basically his personality clash, I would read that as. But he said he's going to leave his phone open and he wants to stay in the London area.
Is that what he said?
I heard that on the radio this morning.
Oh, really? In the London area. But where else would that possibly be? I don't know. I mean, he even lived in London. When he was working in Paris, he still had his house in London.
Oh, did he?
But there are jobs that are available. Now, Brighton is possible. Would he be interested in Brighton? I don't know. Manchester United, then he was linked with Manchester United before, but he's a very good manager. But Chelsea, I think, have made a huge mistake because they're going to go back to the drawing board and then they said, oh, we want a young manager. It's just I think it's craziness, absolute craziness to get rid of Maurizio, although it may be 6 or 1.5 dozen the other.
24 managers since 2000.
Yes.
God, I mean, high turnover.
Did you see the thing about the popes?
No.
No, go on.
Apparently, there's more Chelsea managers than popes since 1770 something.
Who comes up with these statistics? They go, oh, I know.
Yeah, there was the 2 John Pauls, and that was quite a quick one in the 80s, so that turned around quickly, but there were also a couple of quick Chelsea managers. I don't know who would come up with that and go, man, what are the more popes since the 1770s? But apparently that's the case.
Very good.
Oh, well, there you go.
Shall I use that again, or shall we ditch that phase?
Once was enough, I think.
I liked it.
But the thing is now, there's going to be white smoke over Stamford Bridge when the new manager comes in. Maybe that would be a nice idea. A little blue smoke, maybe. I don't know.
Gareth Southgate. Is he being ruthless?
Yeah, I think... You know what? I think he is. And I think it's about time, because often he would stick with players, even though... Are they in form? Should they be there? Now, the players that have been dropped then for the England squad, it's 33... I was mentioning this yesterday. It was going to be around a provisional squad of around 30. It's 33, which will then drop to 26 on the 8th of June, just before the Euros. So Marcus Rashford is out. Now... it would be unthinkable maybe a year ago, but he's had a bad season. And there's been better players in the position. So Marcus Rashford's been left out. Cole Palmer, Phil Foden, Bukayo Saka all been better. Jordan Henderson. Now, I can't understand how Jordan Henderson has still been even around the squad, because he left Liverpool. He went to Saudi Arabia, still playing for England when he's in Saudi Arabia, whereas, let's face it, the quality's not going to be that good. Then he's left there, gone to Ajax in Holland, not done very well there either. So finally he's been told, look, you're 33 years old, and so he's left out.
So is that it, FM? Is he done?
I think he is, yeah. There's no coming back from that at 33. I mean, Raheem Sterling is out, Calvin Phillips is out, but there are 5 new caps as well. Curtis Jones, Adam Wharton from Crystal Palace. James Trafford, Gerald Quansah from Liverpool, Everton's Jared Braithwaite. But there's no guarantee that they are going to be going to Germany. But he's going in with new talent, which is good and exciting, and being a little more ruthless. So I think it's pretty exciting, and I think we'll win the Euros. I do.
Oh, okay.
Look at your surprise.
Yeah,
I do.
It's all about...
I'll still stick with it.
Momentum.
That's exactly what it's about.
Let's see.
But that's the thing about Chelsea. You know, the momentum was there, and then... That's it. It's all gone, and off goes Mauricio Pochettino.
All right. We better have a bit of cycling.
Yeah, you like cycling,
I do like cycling, and the Giro d'Italia bosses are under fire.
Well, yeah, the Giro d'Italia. Now, this is going on at the moment in Italia, of all places.
Well,
who would have thought? It's the Tour de France of Italia, the Giro d'Italia. Now, there's chaos. There was awful weather conditions. Now, we're looking at... it looks pretty bad. Now, look at that there. Now, this is where they've got to cycle. There was a 3-hour delay to stage 16. Now, teams refused to start at the scheduled 202-kilometre route, which is Livigno to Val Gardena, which is ski resorts. That was for you, Isabel.
Thank you.
So they go around the Umbrel Pass, which is into Switzerland. But to be honest, cut a long story short, it's snowy and it's like 2 degrees. It's a ski resort.
Yeah.
So the cyclists having to go down this mountain just saying, well, this is crazy. We can't. This is too dangerous. Whereas the organisers going, well, that's what we do. So Australian Ben O'Connor called the organisers dinosaurs, says it's absolutely crazy. So all the teams agreed to say, we're not going to do this because it's too dangerous.
Yeah. Quite right.
We should... It's madness.
If they want to do that, do it at peak summer season. But if you're going up into... People were skiing just a few weeks ago.
I know. Can you imagine skiers going, and then you're riding a bicycle?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, is it like that?
Yeah.
I'm like that.
You're on your own.
I'm still
on the front.
I know. Oh, no, and then they have to ring, ding, ding, as they're going round people.
I mean, it's true, because they go hellish speeds down the mountains.
I know.
Hellish speeds.
Can you imagine this? Yeah, and
so what's happening? So they're just boycotting that stage?
Yeah, that's it. They did it. So they missed... It's about 80 kilometres. They said, look, we'll start further down.
Yeah.
And everybody's agreed to that, so the teams have had to say fine. So Tadej Pogačar from Slovenia, he leads the general classification. Geraint Thomas, our boy, of course, former Sports Personality of the Year, currently in 3rd.
All right.
Good.
Still do it.
OK, fantastic. Coity, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll ride off on my bike with my little bell and my basket on the front.
And we've got some charades as well with the actions. I love it. Thanks so much.
Keep my hands on, sit like this.
No, we're talking about Italy. You've got to move your hands if you're Italian.
Exactly.
I went to the
Mamma mia.
I went to the dentist on Friday to get a new crown.
Yeah.
Oh, God, my teeth are still a bit sore. But my dentist, the guy doing it, very good, but was Italian.
Yeah. Oh, was it?
So he's...
Was it? Did you pull the tooth out?
The drills are going in.
I think I've got a bit of Italian in me, just because I'm quite like this. You know, I'm quite... I gesticulate a lot.
Yes.
Yes.
I've noticed your gesticulations.
And I've got quite a Latin temperament. You know, I can get cross quickly, but then I'll cry, and I've got lots of love. I'm quite Italian. I think maybe I'm Italian, guys.
Wow.
It's all tears and fury in this studio.
It's all drama.
And you're a particularly good footballer as well.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's more the pasta eating. That's my specialism. Right, that's enough from us for now. I'll give them a quick break.
Not stereotyping by any chance. There's none of that going on, is there? No. I would hope not.
I'm Renee Hunderkamp. They'll be here to talk some sense and take us through what's making the news in just a moment.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, there's a lane closed westbound again today for emergency repairs between junctions 22 and 21 from Rishworth Moor to Milne Row. In Derbyshire, the A38 is closed southbound north of Derby between the A61 at Little Eaton Island and the A6 at Palm Court Island after a lorry caught fire. Train services remain suspended between Avonmouth and Severn Beach because of a points failure. In London, the A307 is closed along Petersham Road in Richmond because of an accident. In Kent, the A2 is partly blocked westbound by an accident just before the M25 with queues from Gravesend. Also in Kent, there are queues on the M26 approaching the M25 because of roadworks and queues on the A249 heading south towards roadworks just before junction 5 of the M2 that stop you roundabout at Sittingbourne. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I don't know.
Let's take a look at some of the Wednesday newspaper front pages. We just had to conflab on which day of the week it was.
What day is it?
It's confusing because you're in and, you know, we're all over the shop.
No
on
idea.
normal days.
Anything could be happening.
Here's the Daily Telegraph leading with our top story this morning, the Conservative MP Craig McKinley, who's been opening up about his incredible journey, sepsis, having his hands and feet amputated, but remaining undeterred to continue in public life.
At the Times leads with the police being told to make fewer arrests to free up overcrowded prisons.
Here's The Guardian. It's leading with the rise in under-40s being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, with reported cases going up by 40% in the last 6 years.
The Eye this morning leading with the former Royal Marine who's been charged with spying for the Hong Kong Intelligence Service. He was found dead in a park in Maidenhead on Sunday.
And the Daily Mail is leading with the British grandfather from Bristol who died on yesterday's storm-lashed plane journey from London to Singapore. 7 other passengers are in a critical condition.
All right, let's talk through those then with Norman Baker and Renee Hunderkamp. Good to see you both this morning.
Morning.
Renee, let's start with you, should we, and Craig McKinley, because, I mean, whatever your politics, actually, this is an inspirational story.
Really. So I listened to this last night quite accidentally, you know, when we have to go to bed early, and it actually gave me goosebumps because for so many reasons. Firstly, what an inspiration that he has come through, you know, a life-challenging event that most people would just give up and die, but he didn't. He's lost all of his limbs. He has a very small child, and he's determined to get back in the House of Commons, to get back working. He wants to be known as the bionic MP. And the bit that reduced me to tears is when he said he could no longer feel his daughter's hand.
Renee, me too. Exactly the same.
It's giving me
exactly
goosebumps
the same
now.
thing. God bless them both.
And does it not show you that the small things in life that we don't actually even think about, we take for granted, and we should grasp every day, because we never know what's around the corner?
Absolutely. And sepsis, really frightening. And we were talking about a number of people we've talked to over the years who've had tragic losses from this, and it does have some of the symptoms overlap with quite common symptoms. It's the temperature thing and the feeling drowsy. How do you know when it's sepsis? You don't want to be the person that's ringing 111 every time you've got...
No. And for doctors, it's equally terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, my friends who work in hospitals say they could never be a GP because they couldn't live with this degree of risk every day, not knowing. But I guess it's just being ultra-aware when things deteriorate rapidly, when it just doesn't look normal. But I think, you know, it is very rare. Let's not scare people.
Yes.
This doesn't happen very often.
Well, they're 4 times more common than breast cancer, the expert was telling us.
In terms of the deaths. But again, it's about early treatment, very early treatment, and recognising it.
Well, oddly enough, we had... oh, no, I bet I can't find it now because I've shut the page down, but someone got in touch on gbnews.com/yoursay saying they had it, but it was caught... they fell down the stairs, their daughter was there, they felt like they were dying, but it got... they got them to hospital, and... 3 days later, they were fine.
Yeah, it's
so
about...
it's to get that early treatment.
Really early, and it's even... If a GP expects sepsis in their surgery, they've got a protocol to administer really hardcore antibiotics there and then on the spot, and we have them in our emergency box.
What causes it? Because it's this autoimmune response that starts attacking your tissues, but can it be triggered just by... a septic thing?
Any infection. So he had a bit of a cold, you know, and obviously his immune system, rather than getting on top of it and killing it, actually went into overdrive.
Gosh. Norman, let's talk about this story, which is equally shocking, frankly. We've been talking for the last few weeks about this crisis in our prisons, people being released, being full up by the end of June, with the warning shot. Well, today, front of the Times, and they're saying police are being told to make fewer arrests.
They are being told that, and they're also being... the system is being instructed, as it were, to release people up to 70 days early from prison to make space. There's a conflict between what the government wills and what the government pays for, ultimately. It's what it comes down to. We have, as a society, under various governments, now got the highest prison population in Europe per head of population, apart from the US, which is much higher, but compared to other European countries, that's a figure. And yet the government, successive governments, have not made provision for prison places to deal with that. And it's not simply that there are no places, which there aren't any places, but it means that the government is now willing people to be arrested, all sorts of new laws to arrest people, and there's no provision for them in the system. So it's completely chaotic, and frankly, the government's failed totally on this front. And it's not just the prisons itself, because if you look at the report in The Guardian this morning online, I don't think it's in the paper, this is about inmates in Winchester Prison breaking through walls with plastic cutlery. And you just think, well, you know, the whole country's falling to bits under this government. If you can get through a wall in a prison with plastic cutlery, what kind of state are these prisons in?
And there's a crisis with the staffing, because we know not only have lots of people left, but also people don't want to work there. It's incredibly dangerous.
Why would you
to
want to
work
work
in
there?
our prisons. Actually, I can't remember which minister we had on last week, but I was picking up this point about the prisons being overcrowded and prisoners being released, violent criminals often being released before the end of their sentence. It's only a few days, as if you're really just sweeping it under the carpet. Only a few days short of their sentence.
I guess if you were if you were the relative of somebody who was then attacked by said criminal in that few days, you would feel very differently about it.
Well, you've got to hope they've been rehabilitated. I mean, that's the idea of prison. It's what's meant to happen.
It doesn't happen, Steve. It doesn't happen because they're so 3 hours a day, half of them.
It does with some people.
Not enough by any stretch of imagination. Some are in their cells 23 hours a day. That's the reality at the moment.
Yeah, but you know, in terms of this, what I'm slightly intrigued by is the answer cannot simply to be build more prisons, have an even bigger prison population. It has to be about prevention and stopping people offending in the first place.
That's totally right. Speaking as a former crime prevention minister, that's exactly right. You have to prevent people from committing crime in the first place. For example, there have to be alternative provision for youth to get involved in sports and other activities to get them off the streets. That's one thing you can do sensibly. Secondly, you have to make sure that people who shouldn't be in prison aren't there. And there are people in there who should be in the mental health system, actually, and there are people there who have committed very, very small small crimes who shouldn't be there. And if you manage to do that, then you can make sure the dangerous people aren't released early. We had people who are seriously dangerous prisoners released from Lewis prison in my town in the last couple of weeks who should have been released early.
And I was hearing about a prison, is it in Lancaster prison, which was closed fairly recently. It's been turned into a museum. So you can go and view what a museum is like, what a prison is like. and actually there's these overcrowding issues going on. Surely we repurpose that one immediately.
But if you can't staff it, you don't have any prison officers.
Interesting, isn't it? What's The Guardian saying, Renee, about type 2 diabetes?
So I found this really interesting. I told Norman this earlier because we're seeing this all the time. Obesity is the biggest problem that we face, and when you put on weight, you quite often drive yourself into diabetes, which is a really dangerous condition which will ruin the rest of your life and shorten life. Now,
Well, if it's not treated properly.
If it's not treated properly, but even when it's treated properly, it can still be doing damage slowly, quietly. And people do find it very, very hard to keep their sugars in range even when they're on treatment. So I did my health check this year in January, and I was 1 point away from being pre-diabetic.
Goodness me.
And I couldn't work it out. I don't eat processed food. I exercise 3 times a week.
Vision of health.
So I examined my diet, and I was eating a handful of soft prunes a day and having sugar in my coffee. I cut out the soft prunes and I cut out the sugar, which was the hardest thing I have ever done because I have such a sweet tooth. And I retested this week and I'm now in optimal sugar range at 34. And I thought the message from that is not, look how well I've done. It's actually the changes don't have to be huge. And I think for people that are obese and overweight, sometimes it's so overwhelming that you think the changes you have to make to your lifestyle are so massive.
But there's a big difference between being type 2 diabetic and being pre-diabetic. I mean, this is where it does get a bit confusing. I mean, the idea that someone like you should even be worried about being a type 2 diabetic unless it was a genetic predisposition for you is properly crackers, actually.
Well, it was probably crackers. That's why I was so interested about it. But I managed to identify my diet, Steve, and what was pushing me there. And I think this is what people... Why don't we make small changes rather than...
Shame to have to cut out prunes, though, because they're so good for you in lots of other ways.
So I replaced them with a fibre supplement, a natural fibre supplement.
Right, like a fibre gel or something like that.
Yes.
So can I just ask, sorry, I'm taking advantage of the doctor here today, but were you noticing any of the symptoms, like extra thirst or going to lure that? You wouldn't notice that?
No.
I'm just thinking if people at home in this age bracket have any...
So I just did a health check.
Right.
So maybe encourage people to go forward to their GP.
What might
just
people
have some routine.
noticed if they are...
They wouldn't
without
notice
nothing.
really. They wouldn't notice anything.
No. But the issue with here, you talk about small changes, and fine if someone identifies you as being pre-diabetic. But the problem with this isn't people who are pre-diabetic. No. This is about people who are properly overweight, possibly type 2, with not getting any treatment for it.
Right. And so the big problem here, the thing that's driving this is ultra-processed food. Ultra-processed food is the evil of our society now and is driving people's weight because it doesn't fill you up.
Give us examples of what ultra-processed...
So almost everything that you buy that's pre-prepared in a package is ultra-processed now.
Microwave meals.
But biscuits... breakfast
cereals,
things like this. So what we need to do is go back to buying things from scratch as much as we can and cooking. But for that, we need education. Yeah. We need to teach people what's bad, what's good, how to cook. We need to start in schools.
Happen.
Well, it needs to happen, or people are not going to live.
But it's never going to happen now. People are not going to go to the supermarket and not buy biscuits, breakfast cereal.
Well, it does make me think, though, about what cereal my kids eat. I mean, we have a whole array. We have all of the high in fibre. We have oats, do a lot of porridge at the weekend. But for speed, sometimes...
So do you know what Alice...
They'll have
Alice now
wholemeal Cheerios and things like that.
But they're processed and really bad. There's a direct link to cancer. Up to 30 cancers. We're driving cancer and we're driving obesity. Alice now, she used to have porridge. She's now switched to plain rice. That's what she has for breakfast.
Plain rice?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
She wanted it, that's what she has.
What about...
plain rice?
Yep.
Weetabix is good, isn't it?
No, Weetabix is not good.
No, Weetabix.
None of the cereals.
The health visitors told us to give our
None of the cereals.
When we were weaning them. Oh, dear. Right, porridge or nothing.
Well, no, porridge.
Porridge is good.
It's not good.
It is if you buy organic, so there's no pesticides.
No, but forget all that. But porridge actually forces your blood glucose up very, very quickly. And that's without any sugar on it, I have it with salt. Porridge with salt.
Porridge is actually a low glycemic food.
No. Everyone says porridge is a low glycemic food. How often do you eat porridge?
I don't eat porridge.
Right, but how often, if you would eat porridge, how often would you eat it? Or all the people who say it's low glycemic and actually monitor their blood glucose as they eat it?
What?
Well, nobody.
Nobody.
No, but I do.
Yes.
And you eat porridge with just a little bit of salt on, skimmed
but
milk.
That might be you.
No, it happens to every type 1 diabetic who's on CGM, who monitors it. It happens. Your bloods go through the roof like a rocket.
OK.
So the idea that it's low glycemic is nonsense.
But what I'm going to say is it's not processed. So
it's not processed.
So it's not going to give you cancer.
No, but it will give you a sugar boost.
It might give, but so does a banana.
Oh, yeah, exactly. A banana does, but you'd expect a banana to.
Yeah.
People eat porridge thinking, well, this is good, my bloods are going to be nice and level with porridge, it's going to enter my system very slowly. Nonsense. Yeah. It's absolute nonsense.
Guys, I'm going to talk about this death in a Maidenhead park, not just of any person, but somebody who was in court last week, Norman, accused of spying on behalf of Beijing for anyone who was a sort of Hong Kong pro-democracy.
Someone who was potentially facing porridge at some point in the future. This Royal Marine who has been charged.
An immigration officer, which is probably the more shocking.
Yes, indeed. And there's 2 other people who were charged with him, including a UK Border Force officer. And Mr. Trinkets now has been found dead in a park in Maidenhead. They're not quite clear what's happened. It's just important to perhaps note that in last week's hearing, the prosecutor said Mr. Trinkets had attempted suicide before being charged and asked for the defendant to be remanded in custody for his own welfare. He didn't seem to be remanded in custody, which maybe links back to the previous story about shortage of places to keep people. But in any case, there'll be a full post-mortem. There'll be toxicology tests and examining data from mobile phones and all the other aspects which you would expect to be carried out.
But, I mean, this is absolutely tragic for his family.
It really is.
Yes, of course it is. I mean, it's unexpected. Any death like this is unexpected. He's quite young, he's 37, so it's very sad for them. But it does suggest that the system has not been followed properly if the man was allowed to be in that situation.
Dear, oh dear.
No, it's not good. Oh, dear, let's have a look. We've got time.
Out of time.
We've got time.
1 minute 45.
Let's talk about this flight.
Yes.
Renee. I mean, honestly, I know they're quite rare for stuff like this to happen, but absolutely terrifying.
Terrifying. And, I mean, the fact that the 73-year-old gentleman had a heart attack, I think, speaks to how terrifying it clearly was. I mean, I fly often, and I never have my seatbelt undone for this reason, because I read about a case about 20 years ago very similarly, and they're completely unpredictable. And these poor passengers, they must have all believed they were going to die. Yeah. That's the fear that they must have had.
Well, and the injuries, the head injuries, it really does make you think twice about the safety of having even shoes taken off and floating about on the floor, laptops, hot drinks. I mean, are they safe on flights? It's just beggars belief. It really does make you think twice about, whether or not we need to change our behaviour on board flights. But then apparently it's 0.1% chance that you will hit this in the atmosphere when you're flying. So it's highly unlikely that you will. And, the woman who was one of the air hostesses on board said she'd been flying for 30 years and never encountered any extreme turbulence at all.
There's a difference between hazard and risk. The risk of something happening on an airline is very low indeed. It's a very safe form of transport. But the hazard, if it does go wrong, is quite significant.
Well, that's
well said.
That's the problem, isn't it? If something goes wrong, you're basically toast.
But I think it comes back to that we can't mitigate all risk from
No.
Totally.
No.
Yeah.
No, we can't.
But do you fly if you have a heart condition on,
Well,
yes, because you must live your life as if today is the last day.
Right, living our lives, we've got to go and check on the weather.
Yes, we do.
How that will be.
Here's Alex.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Here's your latest GB News weather update, brought to you by the Met Office on this rather wet Wednesday. Heavy rain's going to spill across many parts of the country, and that does bring the risk of some flooding. It's already a wet start across parts of eastern England, and that rain spilling its way north and westwards across many areas as we go through the day. The rain is really going to be persistent and intense for some of us, and we are likely to see some impacts in association with such wet weather. There will also be some showers around towards the north and also the south of the country, but the sunshine is going to be relatively limited. Temperatures not as high as they have been recently, and under the wet weather it's going to feel pretty unpleasant. Like I said, some showers developing, especially towards the south. Some of these could turn heavy and thundery as we go through the evening. Some frequent lightning, perhaps even some large hail to watch out for here. The greatest cause for concern, though, will be the very wet weather across parts of England and Wales and into southern Scotland too. Here, the persistent rain could lead to totals building up as we go through today into tomorrow in excess of 100 millimetres in some places, especially over the high ground of North Wales. We are likely to see some impacts from it. Towards the northwest of Scotland, there will be some showers as we go through the day, and again these could be a little bit heavy at times too. Through the evening and overnight, the rain does gradually make its way north and westwards, but it takes quite a while to do so, which is why we're going to continue to see those rainfall totals building up and why there is the risk of some impacts, including some flooding. Towards the south, as we go through the night, it should turn largely dry. There may be some clear breaks, but on the whole staying quite cloudy. Temperatures for most not dropping a huge amount. Thursday does look like it will be another wet day for the northern two-thirds of the country. Perhaps the rain not quite as heavy as through today, but nonetheless it is going to be quite a wet picture, and that still brings the risk of some impacts because of the unsettled weather. Drier and perhaps brighter towards the south. Temperatures still not quite as high as they were earlier on in the week, but feeling pleasant enough in any sunshine. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, there's a lane closed westbound again today for emergency bridge repairs between junctions 22 and 21 from Rishworth Moor to Milne Row. In Derbyshire, the A38's closed southbound north of Derby between the A61 at Little Eaton Island and the A6 at Palm Court Island after a lorry caught fire. Train services are suspended between Avonmouth and Severn Beach because of a points failure. Trains have been stopped between Hythe and both Clapton-on-Sea and Walton-on-the-Naze, where something's been caught on the overhead lines. In London, Petersham Road in Richmond is closed because of an accident. On the M26 in Kent, there are westbound queues towards the M25 because of roadworks, and also in Kent there are queues on the A249 heading south towards roadworks just before junction 5 of the M2 at the Stockbury roundabout at Sittingbourne. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking? Not a line, I never won a penny in my life.
I don't know what to say.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocked me. This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Morning to you, 7 o'clock, Wednesday the 22nd of May.
Thank you for your company. You're tuned in to Breakfast this morning with Stephen Dixon and Isabel Webster. Lovely to have you with us.
Well, today, an inspiring return. Tory MP Craig McKinley reveals all about his sepsis battle, which has left him without hands or feet, as he plans to return to Parliament today.
I'm hoping people might give me the benefit of the doubt and say, that man's been a fighter for himself. He's damn well going to fight for me. I'm going to give him my support.
The bionic MP.
Bionic MP is what I want to be.
Any minute now, we are expecting the latest inflation figures. Liam Halligan standing by to break down exactly what this means for you.
The cost of living crisis has impacted us all. Will today's inflation number mark an end to all that and better times ahead?
Terror in the sky as turbulence on board a Singapore Airlines flight from London leads to 1 death and dozens of injuries.
A week after appearing in court, the Metropolitan Police are investigating the unexplained death of a man charged with spying for Hong Kong.
And in the sport, Chelsea and Mauricio Pochettino have parted company just as he's managed to get a tune out of his £1 billion team. But I don't think Chelsea fans can be too happy about that. Gareth Southgate showed his ruthless side by axing Marcus Rashford and Jordan Henderson from his England Euro squad. And England cricket is back. Well, you can tell by the weather that England cricket's back as they take on Pakistan in the first T20 at Headingley later tonight.
Heavy persistent rain is going to cause some major problems for quite a few of us today. There are a number of warnings out. I'll have the details coming up.
Loads of you have been in touch on prisons. Dave says a long overdue rethink is needed about who we send to prison. This means spending money on other options, like funding agencies to help people instead of locking them up. It also means adequately funding the police and better pay for the probation staff. Probation is really struggling at the moment. So there you go. It does need a wider range of thinking. You can't just lock everybody up. Clearly something's going very wrong.
You can't not arrest people.
Oh, no, exactly.
Of the fear of not having any space. I think this could become a really big issue in an election year.
Yeah.
The Conservatives really want to be seen as the party of law and order. There's an opportunity there probably for Labour to expose this if they wanted to. But it'll be interesting to see what the government says in relation to all of this.
If we're locking more people up than Western Europe per head of population than the rest of Europe, then something's going wrong. And it needs, but I mean, the answer will be very complicated.
Right, breaking news leading our programme this hour, and in the last few moments we have been hearing inflation has fallen again to 2.3%. Now it's down from last month's rate of 3.2%. It didn't quite hit the Bank of England's 2% target, which I know would have been really key for the government. We're not knocking it, 2.3%, not to be sniffed at.
It's not far. I'll tell you what, should we just, instead of us waffling on, let's talk straight to Liam Halligan, who's here, who actually knows what he's talking about. Good to see you, Liam.
It's all relative, Steve.
Yeah, I tell you, this isn't far off the Bank of England's inflation target.
It isn't. It's 2.3%. So over the last 12 months, prices have gone up on average by 2.3%. That doesn't mean they've come down. They've gone up, but just less than they were going up. Back in October 2022, annual inflation was 11.1%, a 50-year high. As you say, it has now come down towards the Bank of England's 2% target. Why has it come down? It's come down because we've had lower utility bills, or we've had fewer increases in utility bills. We've had a reduction in the Ofgem energy price cap. Food price inflation has come down as post-lockdown supply chains have managed to reboot themselves. It's still above the Bank of England's 2% target, and that's why when the Monetary Policy Committee meets on June the 20th, the 9 economists at the Bank of England who decide whether interest rates are going to move or not, I think they're going to keep interest rates, Stephen, at the current 16-year high of 5.25%.
Really?
So no interest rate cut next month, in my view.
Right, interesting. That would be disappointing, I suppose, for a lot of people. But, I mean, the year's not done. Maybe we'd see them later in the year. Who knows? What's the sort of mood generally, economic sort of picture-wise? We had a very short, sharp recession, which the Chancellor will be pleased about. We've had economic growth better than America and Germany and France, so lots for the government to be crowing about. Will they be happy with this morning?
The government will be happy because it shows that inflation is definitely on a downward trend. From 3.2% last month to 2.3% this month is a big sort of proportionate fall in inflation. But then the opposition will say, well, what's inflation got to do with you? Inflation's all about how the Bank of England sets interest rates. That's why the Bank of England is independent, because politicians aren't meant to mess with inflation because they always mess it up. That's been the history. That's why we've got an independent Bank of England. And as you say, Isabel, there have been estimates coming out most recently from the International Monetary Fund that rarely does the UK any favours when it comes to forecast. They are actually saying that the UK economy is outperforming some of the other large G7 economies, not least Germany, Italy, growing about the same as France. Look, but these are still tiny numbers. Yeah. The economy has still not really got out of second gear since lockdown. Indeed, I would say, since that global financial crisis back in 2008-9, we seem to be stalling. The government obviously will be hoping for better economic news in the run-up to an election this autumn. And I'd say that they'll be hoping for at least 1 or 2 interest rate cuts yet before a November election, as well as another tax cut.
Yeah. But is there a sense with this that the Monetary Policy Committee are going to be looking at other factors rather than just inflation, sort of more underlying factors?
Absolutely right. They'll be looking at wage inflation, and wage inflation is still high. Real wages, that is wages after inflation, are now growing quite strongly, and they'll be worried because higher wages, of course, that's great news if you're at work, but that increases the costs of firms. Firms pass on those costs, of course, and then that feeds through into the prices that we pay in the shops for our goods and services. As well as wage inflation, the Bank of England will also have its BDI, or 9 of its BDIs, or 18, 9-strong Monetary Policy Committee, on global energy markets, commodity markets, particularly oil and gas. As I often say here on GB News, geopolitics is really important. All that turmoil in the Middle East, ongoing turmoil between Russia and Ukraine, it spooks oil markets, it spooks gas markets. Any flare-up in geopolitics, you can see that feeding into energy prices. They could spike, and that would feed into inflation. So this interest rate cut, I think it is on the way. It is on the way. I don't think it will happen next month because we're still above target, and we may yet get 1 or 2 interest rate cuts before an election.
But is there still an issue with the Monetary Policy Committee in the sense that, I mean, they can turn around and say, well, our plan has worked, then. We've kept prices high, everyone's been squeezed, some people, squeeze till they squeak on all of this. And yet there's still that big argument to say, actually, this hasn't been the right policy. This high level of base rate is not what's brought inflation down. Are we sort of feeding the beast with this?
There's definitely a debate going on about the Bank of England. Nobody in government, nobody in authority wants to have a debate about the Bank of England when the Bank of England is trying to get inflation down, because it looks as if you're trying to move the goalposts. You're trying to blame the Bank of England, and that will be a kind of downward spiral. But there's definitely a debate ongoing. Should the Bank of England stay independent? Did the Bank of England... Was it asleep at the wheel? Was it too slow to raise interest rates? Well, putting my reporter hat to one side and being a columnist and analyst, I've been writing, throughout 2020 and 2021, people like me, there were a few of us were saying, you have to raise interest rates sooner. Inflation's coming down the track post-lockdown. The Bank of England didn't listen. Inflation will be transitory, old boy, don't worry about it. That turned out to be wrong. The Federal Reserve and the states got that wrong as well. And because they were too slow to raise interest rates when inflation was going up, I personally think they've been too slow to lower interest rates with inflation coming down. We've had 13 interest rate rises. They take months and months and months to feed through. The impact of previous interest rate rises is still in the system, even though inflation's coming down. If I was on the Monetary Policy Committee, I'd have cut months ago.
OK, interesting. Well, this is at 2.3%, the lowest it's been since July 2021.
Yep.
And don't forget, when Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister, inflation was at 11%, and he did manage to achieve, it wasn't his work solely, but the pledge.
He's hitching his wagon to it.
Yeah, he has, 100%, and he wanted to halve it by Christmas, and he did. We've got comments in from the Treasury and from Rachel Reeves this morning. The Treasury saying we rightly protected millions of jobs during COVID and paid half of people's energy bills after Putin's invasion of Ukraine sent bills skyrocketing, but it wouldn't be fair to leave future generations to pick up the tab. That's why we must stick to the plan to get debt falling. The economy is turning a corner with strong growth this quarter and inflation close to target, allowing us to cut taxes for the average worker stagger by £900 a year.
Well, as political messaging goes, the key phrase there that will be repeated ad nauseum by Conservatives up and down the country: the economy's turning a corner. The real important aspect here for politics and for the lives and livelihoods of GB News viewers and listeners, and indeed all of us here in the UK, is, are we going to feel that the economy is turning a corner? That's the crucial thing. And I have to say, when I talk to lots of people, get lots of emails, lots of messages, many, many people out there do not feel any of this recovery. They are still struggling. And that is the challenge for the government. It's the Ronald Reagan question. Do you feel better than you did 5 years ago?
Yeah.
And for a lot of British people, I'm afraid they're going to say no.
Interesting. What's your view on this? Rachel Reeves, who's the Shadow Chancellor, has made a statement, but it's just politics, really, unfortunately. She says inflation's fallen, she says, but no, it's not the time for Conservative ministers to be popping champagne corks. After 14 years of Conservative chaos, families are worse off, prices have soared, mortgage bills have risen, taxes at a 70-year high. Rishi Sunak's now putting family finances at risk again with his £46 billion unfunded policy to abolish national insurance. It will mean higher borrowing, higher taxes and the end of the state pension. Labour's first steps will be to deliver economic stability so we can grow our economy and keep taxes, inflation and mortgages as low as possible.
Well, Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves, she's got to tread a fine line here. On the one hand, she wants to do her politicking and keep whacking the Tories over the head. On the other hand, she doesn't want to come across as churlish. She doesn't want to be seen to be talking down the British economy. If you're running a small business, out the back of a van, you're trying to get business going, you're trying to drum up business for yourself. You want firms, households to feel better. The last thing you want is a leading Labour politician seeing to be negative on the economy when we're trying to get things moving. Economics is all about human nature and sentiment. The trade-off between fear on the one hand and greed on the other, as they say in financial markets. I do think Rachel Reeves has to be careful here. She's got a point, of course, though, that the Tories, this is not down to them. Inflation falling is not down to them.
Well, that's interesting, because the Prime Minister's just released a statement saying this is proof that the plan is working and the difficult decisions we've made are paying off.
Well, his argument would be that because the Tories have shown relative constraint with spending, that has helped to get our arms around inflation. I think there's something in that, but it's been a lot more, in my view, about those sky-high punitive interest rates, which have basically throttled the economy. Interest rate rises are a very blunt instrument. You are deliberately making life more difficult for people who want to borrow, firms or households. And that is what lowers demand and brings down pressure for price rises. It's painful, but it seems, for now, to have worked.
Well, Liam, we're lucky to have your excellent analysis. Thank you very much for making that all understandable for us this morning, and we'll see more of you a little bit later on. And we've got another incredible story for you this morning, this one about an inspiring Conservative MP, Craig McKinley. He's returning to Parliament today after a phenomenal battle with sepsis.
Yeah, he's had extreme surgery, removing his hands and his feet.
Yes, he's replaced those with prosthetics, and McKinley and his wife spoke to GB News political editor Christopher Hope about his journey. Just a warning, the report contains some sensitive images.
But one day, his life changed suddenly. It was one of those days that will be etched on Craig's memory for life. It was the end of September 2023. He was getting ready to go on holiday with his family. He started to feel unwell, and unexpectedly, Craig had contracted sepsis.
So the Grim Reaper let me survive, but he's taken his payment in 4 of my limbs. But that's the way it is. Plenty worse things happening.
That is it. No way back. And yes, he was very matter of fact. He accepted that they black, they not any use anymore. And that's it. So he had a very long operation. And he did come back without those black arms and legs. And by then I was fine. I just knew that is it. That's the new new future, new life begins.
When your body just isn't doing something you want it to do and you think you can do it. I mean, when I had skin grafts, and they're very painful. Funny enough, skin grafts have been more painful than anything else, more painful than the amputation. And just trying to transfer off the bed onto a wheelchair, and you're sort of bouncing across, and it is so painful. And you are in tears of frustration that this is just, why is it so bad? Why isn't this getting better? But no, I've been pretty much cheerful throughout. I just think I'm probably coming to the end of my tether of being under the care of an institution of the NHS for so long. Big sadness to me is holding little one's hand, going to school. Can't do that anymore. We can sort of hold hands, but I can't feel that she's holding. That's a little specialness that's never coming back. You know, that touch of hands, it's gone. Being an MP at the end of the day, I hope is about what you got up here rather than knocking on every door, much as I'd like to. But yeah, life will have to change. And if it means more time with family, that has got to be a change for the absolute good, and I'm looking forward to that.
Well, let's bring in Olivia Utley, who can tell us more about all of this. Olivia, a really, really incredible story. And actually, we were discussing it in the newspaper review on how it touches us in so many ways, not only sort of overcoming adversity, but also that sort of father-daughter thing, very, very moving.
It's such an inspiring, incredible story. The way that Craig McKinley has almost taken this all in his stride. He said he's been pretty cheerful throughout, although he talks about that sadness about not being able to feel his daughter hold his hand. He'll be back in PMQs today, and his daughter, Olivia, who's going to be 5 tomorrow, will be watching from the public gallery. I'm sure she'll be very proud of him. He wants to be the first bionic MP, he said, and he's planning to fight the next election in South Thanet. He'll be back in Parliament today, just 6 months after that major surgery. Now, he said in that interview with Chris Hope there that he is hoping that people will give him the benefit of the doubt in South Thanet, and they will think, well, he fought for himself, so hopefully he'll fight for me too. He's got a majority of about 10,000 in South Thanet. Now, normally that would be a pretty safe seat, but in these times there is no real Conservative safe seat. We've seen Labour overturn much, much bigger majorities, but perhaps this is going to give him that boost that he needs to win the seat of South Thanet. That's a seat that he's fought very, very hard for over the years. He began life as a UKIP MP. He founded the Anti-Federalist Party, which was a precursor to UKIP, and then he changed to the Conservatives in 2005 because he didn't like the direction that the UKIP party was going in. In the end, he ended up fighting the election against Nigel Farage in South Thanet, one of the 7 times, I think it is, that Nigel Farage has failed to get a seat in Parliament. But yeah, Craig McKinley has been in Parliament ever since as the Conservative MP for South Thanet. He's been a very, very strong Brexiteer. He was one of the biggest Conservative voices behind Vote Leave, and even since Brexit, he's been on the European Scrutiny Committee, making sure that what happens in Brussels gets some robust eyes on it at all times. I'm sure his Brexiteer colleagues will be delighted to have him back in Parliament today.
It's going to be quite a moment. Olivia, thanks very much indeed. Now, a former Royal Marine and Border Force official, Matthew Trinkets, has been found dead in a park in Berkshire just a week after appearing in court accused of spying for the Hong Kong intelligence service.
Yes, police were called to Grenfell Park in Maidenhead on Sunday and set up a cordon whilst their investigations continue.
Let's talk to Defence Editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. Good to see you this morning, Robert. I mean, we talk about China and what they're doing, and of course that's obviously now Hong Kong is part of China, but with a slightly different relationship. Why would the Hong Kong intelligence service be having such an interest in what we're doing?
This is quite difficult because it's difficult to report because co-defendants of Trinkets, I presume, who one has dual citizenship at least, are going to be charged on similar charges that he had been brought up on, accused of, which is spying on freedom movement Chinese supporters. So it's directly related to Hong Kong. This isn't high-level security espionage, but in the background of Trinkets, there is such an extraordinary entanglement with immigration from Hong Kong, the immigration authorities in Hong Kong, the Hong Kong police and Hong Kong intelligence. The charges was that he was gathering information for a foreign intelligence agency. So at one level, it is quite serious. It is interesting that he was given bail, so he wasn't seen as the highest security risk, and that the authorities, the Crown Prosecution Service, has been so open with the background to this story.
Yeah, there's so many elements to this story, not only his own background, a former Royal Marine, then he was, I believe, a UK Border Force at Heathrow official, and then he moved in February to the Home Office as an immigration enforcement officer. But the 37-year-old, because he was released on bail last week and has had contact with the authorities before his death, the police have now referred themselves to the Independent Office for Police Conduct. Now, that's normal procedure, but there's also a story we're talking about today about not enough space in custody at the moment, and you wonder if the two are perhaps related on that level as well. But I suppose on a wider scale, and lots to answer there, but just also talking more widely, we are hearing increasing numbers of stories relating to China and espionage, aren't we? Possibly more than at any other time I can remember.
Well, I think that those looking at particularly cyber espionage and a whole spectrum of cyber and other security threats, there is a view that while we are, for obvious reasons, Ukraine, very much focused on Russia, that in some ways public awareness of the threats from China have been underestimated, and this is part of the message. But relating to the long part of your question, no, you're absolutely right. The intriguing part at the personal level of this story is the man allegedly attempted to take his life while he was in custody, waiting to be charged, and had said that he would take his life. So he was at risk to himself. But the authorities knew that. This is part of why they've referred themselves to the police authority, I think. But to go to your other point, yes, there are 150,000 Chinese students in this country, and they're seen as targets, particularly. What are they doing? There have been questions, as you know, about the Confucius institutions, the so-called two fake police stations, and we are under Chinese surveillance, and we are under a tremendous number of cyber attacks, and a lot of those come from China. A large part related to, unfortunately, to ransomware.
OK, Robert, sadly, we're out of time. Good to see you, though. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At the time of 7:23, let's take a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom. Jeff Kitchen has been named as the British grandfather who died when a Singapore Airlines flight was hit by severe turbulence on a flight between London and Singapore. Airport officials believe the 73-year-old may have suffered a heart attack. More than 50 people were hurt, 7 of them critically, after sustaining head injuries. The travel correspondent for The Independent, Simon Calder, had this to say.
A lot of the damage on those very shocking images that you've been showing to the ceilings and so on were caused by people flying out of their seats because the aircraft suddenly drops. People, inertia means that you stay where you are, which means that you're going to shoot upwards.
Former boss of the Post Office, Paula Venables, is set to begin giving evidence at the Post Office inquiry today. She was the boss between 2012 and 2019, and she'll be talking about what happened to her for the first time in almost a decade, and is expected to reveal what she knew about wrongly accused sub-postmasters. Going to be fascinating to hear what she has to say.
High drama, I would say. Lots of suggestions. There is a smoking garden in her case. We'll be talking about that a little bit later on. We'll be right outside that inquiry with our reporter this morning for you.
Now, if you're thinking of going out today, I wouldn't bother. Let's get all the details from Alex.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Here's your latest GB News weather update, brought to you by the Met Office on this rather wet Wednesday. Heavy rain's going to spill across many parts of the country, and that does bring the risk of some flooding. It's already a wet start across parts of eastern England, and that rain spilling its way north and westwards across many areas as we go through the day. The rain is really going to be persistent and intense for some of us, and we are likely to see some impacts in association with such wet weather. There will also be some showers around towards the north and also the south of the country, but the sunshine is going to be relatively limited. Temperatures not as high as they have been recently, and under the wet weather it's going to feel pretty unpleasant. Like I said, some showers developing, especially towards the south. Some of these could turn heavy and thundery as we go through the evening. Some frequent lightning, perhaps even some large hail to watch out for here. The greatest cause for concern, though, will be the very wet weather across parts of England and Wales and into southern Scotland too. Here, the persistent rain could lead to totals building up as we go through today into tomorrow in excess of 100 millimetres in some places, especially over the high ground of North Wales. We are likely to see some impacts from it. Towards the northwest of Scotland, there will be some showers as we go through the day, and again these could be a little bit heavy at times too. Through the evening and overnight, the rain does gradually make its way north and westwards, but it takes quite a while to do so, which is why we're going to continue to see those rainfall totals building up and why there is the risk of some impacts, including some flooding. Towards the south, as we go through the night, it should turn largely dry. There may be some clear breaks, but on the whole staying quite cloudy. Temperatures for most not dropping a huge amount. Thursday does look like it will be another wet day for the northern two-thirds of the country. Perhaps the rain not quite as heavy as through today, but nonetheless it is going to be quite a wet picture, and that still brings the risk of some impacts because of the unsettled weather. Drier and perhaps brighter towards the south. Temperatures still not quite as high as they were earlier on in the week, but feeling pleasant enough in any sunshine. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Could be really annoyed about the weather, actually.
Yeah.
Partly because celebrity chef, everyone's favourite TV chef, Kevin Woodford, has literally just messaged me saying, watching you two, he's out on a cruise with Mrs W, as we add the sun cream sailing into Mallorca.
Oh, thanks for that. Well, the sun is coming back and we're going to have a heat dome next week, aren't we?
We're having a heat dome, Kevin.
Yeah, next week. So when you're back from Mallorca, you could enjoy it. Or maybe
Honestly,
you're not coming back.
I could really fall out with those two.
Right, stay with us. Perhaps you could be on a cruise whizzing your way into Mallorca this morning, because we have a £20,000 tax-free cash giveaway for you.
Yeah, you can spend it however you like and you'll get every single penny, but you do have to hurry to get in as time is ticking on your chance to win. Here's how that cash could be yours.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking? Not lying, I never won a penny in my life.
I don't know what to say.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocked me. This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, are you a town mouse or a country mouse? That's our debate. I would love to know where you live this morning. We're pitching city versus the countryside. Where would you rather be?
Countryside.
Me too.
Any day of the week.
Although it depends what stage in life. I think when you're young, the city's where you want to be. As you
maybe.
get older. We're old now.
We're old.
Anyway, let us know what you think. gbnews.com/your say. We'll be debating it just after this.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers. I agree. And that's precisely what I'll get. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Now, city life is often seen as the way forward. But do we have this all wrong? Yes, we do, yeah.
Well, it's been revealed that life expectancy in Devon is one of the highest in the country, with locals there crediting the slower pace of life.
Oh,
glorious.
Yeah, sounds
lovely.
So is city life harming our health?
We need to make this balance.
We can't balance this out. And does it cause early deaths? Is it time to go rural and ditch the city?
Well, you can see which side of the fence we're sitting. And the host of Field Sports Channel TV, Charlie Jacoby, also agrees. He says cities are indeed harming us. Good morning to you. But London's life coach, Nina Aouk, says that the countryside, and I hope I got that right, is not always as idyllic as it seems. Good morning to you both. Nina, come on then. Why would you say that city is preferable to country?
Well, as the saying goes, when a man is tired of London, he's tired of life. I lived for 23 years in a very rural area, and it doesn't necessarily mean I was living, I was existing. Having moved to London, I have flourished, and I've just been living in a totally different life. I would say my best life.
How? How and why?
How and why? Well, there's a certain lack of opportunities when you live in a small town, small mentalities, you come across the same sort of thing, small people. But when you move into a large city, you are actually mixing with a whole load of different people, different backgrounds, a lot more opportunities. You don't feel so isolated. And also you're learning so much more about different cultures, different opportunities, as I said. Yeah. And I have nothing but flourish since I've moved. Okay. I can be.
So, Charlie, it sounds like she's painting a picture of a sort of Middle England where you're all a bit parochial, you're all of one race, and you're all quite small-minded. Does that sound fair?
Not really, no. I think we have pretty wide horizons. I think cities are crowded in by walls. And I think there are things that we just do better. And it feels like cities are a kind of 1,000-year experiment that are going wrong. You know, we have a social contract out here in the countryside which works. We have a sense of belonging. So, for example, you know, it is it is impossible, I would say, in the UK countryside to die unnoticed in a remote farmhouse, whereas it is possible to die unnoticed in a block of flats.
Yeah, well, I get the point you're making. It's rather a grim one. But Nina, what about the pace of life? Because I mean, one of the criticisms of living in a city is that it never stops. Life never stops in a city, whereas at least in the countryside, things are quieter. You can switch off. It's all a lot calmer.
I mean, like I said, I've had that personal experience, so I know that, yes, you can switch off, but there's nothing wrong with you switching off in a city. It's your mindset. So it's how you bring that forward into your own life. And also the opportunities, as I said, of you mixing with different kinds of people where you are restricted, mixing with people in a small town, as I was. Now I've got lots of different friends from different backgrounds. And on a business level, it's so much better as well because the opportunity is there for what you want to achieve. I know a lot of people that still live in the same town that I lived for a long time, doing the same thing. And they often look at me and say, oh, you're doing so much now, but the opportunity is there when you move out of your comfort zones. And a lot of people stay in these small towns because it is comfortable.
I wonder, Charlie, are we being a bit unfair in having the debate, if you like, pitching one against the other? Because it would seem to me some people are city folk, some people are country folk.
We wouldn't want the country full of city folk, would we?
Oh, no.
We certainly wouldn't want the country full of city folk now, and I'm sure the city probably feels the same way about the countryside. But if you're talking about, different kinds of people, we have a sense of tolerance out here that perhaps doesn't exist in the city. I mean, I'm going to go as far as say we're just better, nicer people, and that's probably why we live longer.
Nina, can I make a suggestion that maybe it was the time in your life that you were in the country that maybe makes you not like it? I do think that to be young and to be in a city, there is a time and a place. For me, having my children in a city was fabulous. I could walk everywhere with the pram. It was described as Nappy Valley, where we lived. Everyone had children in every house around us. But now we've moved out. We don't need that sort of cheek-by-jowl existence anymore. The kids actually need space. But do you think maybe, as you get older, you might seek the countryside again?
I am older. So it's not the age thing. I don't think age comes into it. I think really what comes into it, that a lot of people are living long lives in the countryside, no doubt, but are they actually living or are they existing? And this is the thing I'm trying to get across, that when you are in a city, there's no opportunity of not living your life because there's so many opportunities to make new friends, do different things. Whereas in this small amount of people, there's only so much you can do.
Oh, well, look, we're going to leave it there. Charlie, Nina, good to see you both. Never the twain shall meet with you two, I think.
So many comments coming in on
there?
GP Views. Liz B, I grew up in a village, too much interest in others' lives and gossiping. Give me a city any day. John says, I'm doing both, central London and Hampshire, but London's not what it used to be. Keep your thoughts coming in this morning. We're both converts, aren't we? We both
I grew up in the country. I'm from the Lake District, so it's just I only lived in the city because I had to. But I can't stand... I mean, I hate London. Yeah. I hate London.
Yeah, I have to drag myself into
It's just
London.
too crowded for me. Yeah. But that's why I think you're either city people or you're not.
Well, I was born in London, stayed in London until I was little, grew up in a town, but for me, I want to see fields and I want to see nature, and wildlife and space.
Space.
Lots of space.
Yeah.
Let us know what you
Bird song, all that. But there you go. I'm a country bumpkin.
Yeah.
Always have been. Right, so let us know what you think. gbnews.com/you'll say.
Hoity is town or country?
I think it's town.
Oh, OK, let's find out.
We'll find out in a couple of minutes.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M621 in West Yorkshire, there are eastbound queues towards Junction 1 at Beeston in Leeds after traffic was stopped because of an accident. In Derbyshire on the A38, there's a lane closed southbound, along with the exit to the A6 at Palm Court Island, north of Derby, for emergency repairs. The damage caused after a lorry caught fire with queues towards there. There are delays of up to half an hour with some cancelled trains between Coventry and Birmingham New Street because of flooding. Train services are suspended between Avonmouth and Severn Beach because of a points failure. In London, Petersham Road in Richmond is closed after an accident. On the M25 in Kent, there are clockwise delays towards and past Junction 5, with westbound queues back along the M26 towards there because of roadworks. Also in Kent on the A249, there are southbound queues towards the M2 at Sittingbourne because of roadworks. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Paul Coyte's got your sport. Good morning.
Hello.
Let's talk about unexpected departures, should we?
Yes.
Goodbye.
What, are you going on holiday? Thank you very much. I'll be off and I'll sit tomorrow. Mauricio Pochettino. I think it really is a surprise. I really do think it's a surprise that Mauricio Pochettino, whether he's given his marching orders or not, it's by mutual consent that he's leaving Chelsea. He's been there for just under a year. It was a tough start. I mean, that's the truth. And people are thinking, what's going on with Chelsea? And it's not working. There's the new owners. They've spent over £1 billion on players, which just isn't seeming to working. But the thing is, with Mauricio Pochettino, it takes a while for players to understand the way he works and the way he wants them to play, etc. And this is the weird thing. It's beginning to click. It's just been the last month or so. They've won 5 on the trot. Finally, Chelsea fans are thinking, yes, this is it. And then just as things are about to work, then the old elbow.
And they've said it's all about philosophy, a philosophical difference or something, which to me just sounds like personalities.
It really is. I mean, I was looking at the quote. I mean, it really is bizarre. I think the quote, it was issues were philosophical and related to the... You wouldn't believe these are American owners, would you? Issues were philosophical and related to dynamics of working with a club structure. So
they didn't like each other.
It's any old nonsense.
I think it is. I know that Maurizio was not happy there, and I think it was the way the philosophy was at the club, that things were just not working.
What is the Chelsea philosophy?
I have no idea whatsoever, and unfortunately, I don't think Maurizio was too sure about it either. But it's the old merry-go-round we were talking about yesterday. So where's that going to go? We've got Roberto De Zerbi, who left Brighton, so he's available possibly. Thomas Tuchel, who has left Bayern Munich, well, he was the Chelsea manager before Pochettino. So anyway, we'll see where that goes. But it is a huge surprise and I think a huge mistake.
Gareth Southgate's been giving a few people the boot. There's been talk about he's not been overly bothered about club performance and he's shown loyalty to the squad in the past. That seems to be changing.
Yeah, it does, because Jordan Henderson, surely, I think everybody agreed that it was time for Jordan Henderson to go. He showed extreme loyalty to him. He left Liverpool, went to Saudi Arabia and then went to Ajax. It just hasn't worked out for him here. 33 years old, so it's time... And there's better midfielders, so it's time that he went. Raheem Sterling is out. Marcus Rashford is out. There's one that maybe some people would be surprised at. If you look at the way he's been playing, though, the season, it's probably a good decision. And he's brought 5 new players in. So this is a squad of 33, which will then be cut down to 26 before the Euros begin. So they've got 2 friendlies, and the Scottish team is going to be announced, or the Scottish squad is going to be announced a bit
But
later.
England's going to win, is it?
You know what? I did say this about 6 months ago, that I think they're going to win.
You said it an hour ago.
Well,
yes, I did.
Have you changed your mind?
Well, it seemed like 6 months ago. It seemed like... No, I'm going to stick with it. I really am. They are the favourites. They are the favourites to win it.
Otherwise...
I know with history, tournaments, it's never worked out so well, but I do believe we will win the Euros this year.
Yeah, sounding less convincing than last hour.
Oh, now that's not fair.
You sound next hour.
We will win the Euros.
Yeah, all right, fair.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Coity, thank you. By the way, are you a town person or a country person?
A town person.
I'd
like to be a country. The older I get, the more country I like.
Right.
Yeah, more of a town person.
Perfect. Coity, love it. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Right, still to come, we're going to take you through the papers with Norman Baker and René Honderkamp. That's in just...
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
2,000 football banning orders have been issued to England fans ahead of this summer's Euro 2024 tournament in Germany. But authorities think that more than 300,000 England supporters could go to Germany, with Scotland fans, of course, also expected to travel in huge numbers. Well, I'm joined now by GB News' home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. So you went to a press briefing this morning. As I understand, the authorities are gearing up to tackle what they see as a huge wave of potential hooliganism at the tournament. What's the latest?
Well, they're certainly not saying they're expecting hooliganism, and they are preparing for the worst, of course, if it happens, but hoping for the best. They say that in recent tournaments, England fans and, of course, Scotland fans have been pretty well behaved, but there will be very significant numbers attending that tournament, which gets underway in just over 5 weeks' time. That first match is Scotland taking on Germany in Munich, and of course just 2 days later it's England against Serbia near Dortmund. So 300,000 England fans alone they're expecting, because it's so accessible. I spoke earlier to Chief Constable Mark Roberts, who is the national lead for football policing. This is what he told me.
Positive, you know, England fans got a great record at recent tournaments. We know when any number of that people travel, there's always potential for issues, but I think the German authorities are really well prepared. And I think one of the positives, particularly thinking about our fans, Germany's a beer drinking culture, so the police are well aware of dealing with people in the nighttime economy. They deal with plenty of big festivals, so I think we're going to a place that is well suited to work with us to keep everyone safe and make sure there's no issues.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
All right, let's see what's in the papers this morning with Norman Baker and René Honderkamp. Tell me, what does Honderkamp mean?
Chicken farm.
Chicken farm. You did say that, and I was like, no, she's pulling your leg.
Yeah. Chicken farm.
Chicken
is a chicken in Dutch.
Oh, right, it's Dutch.
Farm. Yeah.
There we go.
It's fascinating. What a weird name. It's like Helmut Kohl used to be the Chancellor of Germany. Of course, that means cabbage.
Yes, it does.
Prime Minister Cabbage, basically.
And you're a baker, of course. So
and you're a baker.
All the skills here,
yes.
Chicken farmer and a baker.
Anyway, to more important matters. René, inflation has fallen.
Well, this is good news, isn't it?
It's great news.
It is good news. It's going to affect people's mortgages, which is then going to put money in their pocket. Anything that puts money in people's pockets right now has to be welcomed. Obviously, it's great news for Rishi because it gets him closer to his
one of his pledges, which was to halve inflation.
Well, he's more than halved it, though.
Yeah, he did that by
he's
Christmas,
beaten
didn't
that.
he? Yeah.
For his statement today, he says, today marks a major moment for the economy with inflation back to normal. Well, it's not quite back to normal.
It's very low, though, isn't it? I mean, I think once you get to 2.3, I think the problem that we had is it was so ridiculously low, that interest rates were so low that people got very blasé about money and borrowing money.
That leads on to, if I may say so, to the piece in the Times, sorry, the Telegraph and the Financial Times about the IMF. Two stories there. It refers to inflation having been 11.1%, actually, which is a huge drop to where we are now. That was only in 2022. But the IMF is calling for 3 rate cuts by the end of the year as inflation falls, which is a very specific demand of the British government by an unaccountable international body.
Well, the British government can't do it anyway.
Well, they can't because Bank of England, but they're calling the Bank of England to do it, to be fair. But the other story in the FT is about the IMF warning the Chancellor against further tax cuts and saying that the 2% cut in national insurance was irresponsible and saying you shouldn't cut any more this year.
Well, I'm saying it's in relation to the problem that the UK specifically has with worklessness and this rise in people who aren't working, and in order to sustain the economy because of that problem, it either has to be tax rises or, well, what's the opposite?
They've called for measures to include reforms to VAT, capital gains and inheritance tax, as well as charging for a wide range of public services. I mean, there is an issue about democracy here as to whether or not this body is accountable to us.
Well, and also, this is a body, the IMF, who every single forecast and prediction that they've made in the past, in the main, has been wrong. So why would we listen to these people
Well, all forecasts, to be fair, you know, are forecasts. They're just that, aren't they? They often get it wrong, but they're there to try and help and they get revised. But, you know, certainly questions about, you know, how much notice we take of the IMF and what role we want them to have.
If you go back far enough in time, the IMF caused major disruption to the Labour government in the 1970s when Jim Callaghan, I think it was Chancellor, and called in the IMF, and that caused complete lack of confidence in the Labour government, which probably led partly to their demise in '79.
Yeah. Can we have a look at electric cars?
Oh, go on then.
In The Guardian, Renee.
Yeah, so I thought this was a really interesting story. So there's been a massive study, and it is really big, 32 billion electric car miles and trillions of diesel and petrol car miles. And in a rural area, it's less likely to happen, but in built-up areas, electric cars are 3 times more likely to hit pedestrians. And they think it's a combination of younger drivers who, with less experience, tend to have electric cars, that they have a swift acceleration and a longer stopping speed as a result, but also that they are much quieter and in built-up areas.
That's got to be the main reason, surely.
In built-up areas with higher levels of background noise, people can't hear them. And this is close to my heart because, as Isabel knows, I've lost 2 cats to the road in 2 years after that not happening in 25. And I'm convinced it's because animals, pets, can't hear these cars.
It's not just animals, of course, it's blind people as well and others who are vulnerable pedestrians. I dealt with this matter, actually, when I was Transport Minister in the Department for Transport, and we're having international discussions about what should be done about this. I was very firmly of the view that there should be sound added to electric cars when they're travelling perhaps less than 20 miles per hour in urban areas, because people expect that, and otherwise you can caught unawares. I almost got hit by an electric car the other day trying to cross the road because I wasn't looking carefully. I heard nothing. So my natural sense of where traffic was limited.
I've done it in the supermarket car park.
Yeah, I've done it in the school car park with the kids everywhere. You know, we stepped out and did not see a car coming. The good side to quiet electric vehicles is if you live near a motorway, which again I do, the theory is that motorways will soon become much, much quieter. They will still have the tyre noise. But wouldn't that be wonderful if we didn't have such noisy roads?
It would be wonderful, but not for pedestrians and pets and children.
For under 20 miles an hour, I think they
it's the urban areas you have to look at.
So apparently, as we're going to have more and more electric cars, we surely need to find a solution.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because a lot of sporty cars, which are petrol or diesel, have high revs built in on speakers. You can just turn it on because it sounds better.
Well, they should do that, shouldn't they? I mean, my son's got a big sporty car because he's so into cars, and I can hear him coming from about a mile away. I really can. I mean, oh, Callum's coming.
Well, at least the cat can't blame your son then. That's good. That's good news. We're out of time. It's a short one this time. We'll have more from both Renee and from Norman just after 8:30 this morning.
Yes, because I want to hear about Anne Robinson.
I want to hear about Anne Robinson and her... Well, it's not tax dodging, is it? But trying to avoid inheritance tax.
Yes.
More on that a little bit later on. But for now, as Stephen says, it's going to be wet today. Here are all the details.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your latest GB News weather update, brought to you by the Met Office on this rather wet Wednesday. Heavy rain's going to spill across many parts of the country, and that does bring the risk of some flooding. It's already a wet start across parts of eastern England, and that rain spilling its way north and westwards across many areas as we go through the day. The rain is really going to be persistent and intense for some of us, and we are likely to see some impacts in association with such wet weather. There will also be some showers around towards the north and also the south of the country, but the sunshine is going to be relatively limited. Temperatures not as high as they have been recently, and under the wet weather it's going to feel pretty unpleasant. Like I said, some showers developing, especially towards the south. Some of these could turn heavy and thundery as we go through the evening. Some frequent lightning, perhaps even some large hail to watch out for here. The greatest cause for concern, though, will be the very wet weather across parts of England and Wales and into southern Scotland too. Here, the persistent rain could lead to totals building up as we go through today into tomorrow in excess of 100 millimetres in some places, especially over the high ground of North Wales. We are likely to see some impacts from it. Towards the northwest of Scotland, there will be some showers as we go through the day, and again these could be a little bit heavy at times too. Through the evening and overnight, the rain does gradually make its way north and westwards, but it takes quite a while to do so, which is why we're going to continue to see those rainfall totals building up and why there is the risk of some impacts, including some flooding. Towards the south, as we go through the night, it should turn largely dry. There may be some clear breaks, but on the whole staying quite cloudy. Temperatures for most not dropping a huge amount. Thursday does look like it will be another wet day for the northern two-thirds of the country. Perhaps the rain not quite as heavy as through today, but nonetheless it is going to be quite a wet picture, and that still brings the risk of some impacts because of the unsettled weather. Drier and perhaps brighter towards the south. Temperatures still not quite as high as they were earlier on in the week, but feeling pleasant enough in any sunshine. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, there's a lane closed westbound for emergency bridge repairs between junctions 22 and 21 from Rishworth Moor to Milnrow, causing queues. Trains on the East Coast Main Line have been stopped between Doncaster and Peterborough because of an incident. In Derbyshire, on the A38, there's a lane closed southbound with the exit to the A6 at Palm Court Island north of Derby closed for emergency repairs after a lorry caught fire, taking half an hour in delays towards there. On the M1 in Leicestershire, there are northbound queues after traffic was stopped because of an accident at junction 23 at Loughborough. The A1M in Hertfordshire is blocked northbound by an accident between junctions 1 and 2 from the M25 to Welham Green, causing 2 miles of queues towards there from the M25. Train services are suspended between Avonmouth and Severn Beach because of a points failure. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's fast approaching 8 o'clock. It is Wednesday, the 22nd of May. I don't know where May's gone. It's flown by.
No, I don't know. I don't know where the year's gone, frankly. It's nearly Christmas. This is Breakfast with Stephen Dixon and Isabel Webster.
Top story this morning, an inspiring return. The Tory MP Craig McKinley is revealing all about his sepsis battle, which has left him without hands or feet, as he plans to return to Parliament today.
I'm hoping people might give me the benefit of the doubt and say that man's been a fighter for himself. He's damn well going to fight for me. I'm going to give him my support.
The bionic MP.
Bionic MP is what I want to be.
In just a moment, we'll be talking through the latest inflation figures with Liam Halligan. He's going to break it all down, find out what it means for you.
Inflation is down sharply during the year to April, 2.3%, close to the Bank of England's 2% target. The cost of living crisis is now easing, but in my view, no interest rate cuts for a while.
The former Post Office boss, Paula Vanells, is set to begin giving evidence at the Post Office inquiry today.
Terror in the sky as turbulence on board a Singapore Airlines flight from London leads to 1 death and dozens of injuries.
And a week after appearing in court, the Metropolitan Police are investigating the unexplained death of a 37-year-old British man charged with spying for Hong Kong.
And sport this morning, well, I'm surprised, but Chelsea have decided to part ways with Mauricio Pochettino just as they won their last 5 games. So it's now back to the old drawing board for them. The Europa League final is tonight as unbeaten Bundesliga champions Bayer Leverkusen take on Italy's Atalanta in Dublin. And in Leeds tonight, England play their first T20 game of the season against Pakistan with the return of the ever-injured, although hopefully not this time, bowler Jofra Archer.
Heavy persistent rain is going to cause some major problems for quite a few of us today. There are a number of warnings out. I'll have the details coming up.
Interesting. A lot of you getting in touch on the inflation situation. We got the figures out an hour ago, down to 2.3%. It's a significant drop from last month. It's very, very nearly at the Bank of England's target rate of 2%. We're going to get the latest from Liam Halligan, who's sat here. Just I want to put this to you first, Liam, though, because Keith Garland's literally just messaged saying, but what about food inflation?
OK, food price inflation has actually come down a bit. It's around 3.5% during the year to April. That means that it's still adding to inflation, but not nearly as much as it has in the past. Where is this lower inflation coming from? It was 3.2% during the year to March, 2.3% during the year to April. What's come down above all is energy prices. They're not reported specifically by the ONS, which, by the way, I think is a mistake. They should change that. It's contained within a section called Household and Costs and Household Services. That includes energy prices, gas bills, utility bills and so on. And that's down 5% during the year to April. So that's really helping to drag inflation down. Petrol is also cheaper than this time last year. Just 0.5% cheaper, even though in the last month, from March to April this year, petrol prices have gone up. If you look at petrol prices in April, they're down slightly on April 2023. So this is where the lower inflation is coming from. Food prices, petrol prices, utility prices, not least because that Ofgem energy price cap was lowered. But we are still above the bank's 2% target at 2.3%. That's why when the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee next meets on the 20th of June, I don't think they're going to lower interest rates from their current 16-year high of 5.25%. There then isn't an MPC meeting in July. The next MPC meeting after June is August. So it strikes me on these numbers, unless things change, the first interest rate cut won't be before August.
OK, good to know. The Prime Minister, when he took charge, following on from Liz Truss, was greeted with inflation at 11%. It is now, as you say, 2.3%. That's the lowest since July 2021. Understandably, he is rather pleased this morning. Here he is with his thoughts on the latest figures.
Work and resilience. Today we reached a major milestone and inflation is back to normal. And that is an important moment for our country, for the economy, and shows that our plan is working. Now, whilst I know people are only just starting to feel the benefits and there is more work to do, I hope this gives people confidence that if we stick to the plan, there are brighter days ahead.
Can you claim any credit for it, or is it all down to the Bank of England?
You know, when I came into this job, I made it a priority to halve inflation. We've delivered on that, and now, as I said, it's back to normal. That's not just because of our plan that is working, it's because of everyone's collective hard work and sacrifice, and it shows what is possible when we put our minds to it. But I am conscious as well that there is more work to do. People are only just starting to feel the benefits, and that's why it's important that we do stick to this plan so that we can continue to deliver a secure future for everyone. But these things don't happen by accident. I came into office with a plan to bring down inflation. That plan is working, and if we stick to it, there are brighter days ahead.
The truth is, Prime Minister, though, is that prices are still absurdly high. People's mortgages are still going up and the public services are in crisis. When will people really start to feel better in this country?
Yeah, I understand that people are only just starting to feel the benefits of the improvements that we've made, and that will take time for people to really feel them. But what we are now seeing is that everything is heading in the right direction. The economy grew in the first quarter of this year faster than France, Germany and America. Wages have been rising faster than prices for almost a year now. Energy bills are down hundreds of pounds from where they were. Mortgage rates are down from the peak, and today's news on inflation being back to normal is very welcome. So if you put all of that together, that shows that we've got momentum. It shows that the plan is working. But of course, there's more work to do for people to really feel the benefits of all these things. That's why it's important that we stick to the plan. As I said, these things don't happen by accident. I came into office with a plan. That plan is working. And if we stick to it, I can give everyone the peace of mind that there's a secure future ahead for them and their families.
Some of your colleagues are worried that your plans to crack down on graduate visas will actually...
All right, let's leave the Prime Minister there. What did you make of that, Liam? Because actually he was pushed a lot on the idea that, yes, his plan is working, he's enacted it, but people aren't feeling the benefits yet, and that's the key to this, isn't it? It's the intangible.
Well, what was it that Bill Clinton's top political advisor said as he was bidding for the White House in the 1990s? He said, it's the economy, stupid. And that was the phrase he used to Clinton's campaign team, the people bashing the phones, talking to swing voters across the American heartland. Tell them about the economy, because that's what people really, really, really care about. And that's, that is just the way it is. A lot of people vote on the basis of whether or not they and their families feel better off. And the problem that the Tories have, Stephen, is that the economy has been pretty lacklustre in recent years, not just in the UK, but across Europe and across much of the world as we've come out of that lockdown. The Tories are trying desperately to put clear blue water, if you like, between themselves and Labour on the economy, just as they are on immigration and defence and so on. They're lowering taxes. We've had 2 reductions in national insurance, employee national insurance contributions. That's about 950 quid a year. A reduction in tax for the average worker, and inflation is significantly down. Not that that's anything to do with the government, that's because of the Bank of England's interest rate rises. But a lot of people out there are still struggling, and I'm very conscious when I say, look, inflation's 2.3%, down from 3.2%, down from 11% back in October 2022. The cost of living crisis is over. No, it isn't over, because when inflation comes down, it doesn't mean prices come down, it means they go up by less than they were going up.
Yeah.
And for years, we've had wages lagging inflation. Only in recent months have wage increases started to outpace price rises, and that is the reality for many UK families who aren't yet feeling any benefit from this economic recovery.
Liam, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's stick with this topic and get the thoughts this morning of the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones. Good morning. Welcome to the programme. Thank you for putting up with the rain there. I hear it's raining cats and dogs out there. Your reaction, first of all, to this 2.3% inflation figure. It's a significant drop, and I'd be interested to hear what you attribute that to.
Well, it's attributed predominantly to the energy price cap change that came in recently, and actually core inflation, so the rate at which prices are increasing for other goods and services, continues to be between 3.5% and 4%, which is much higher than we would like it to be and higher than markets were expecting. So there's much more work to be done. Of course, we welcome it coming back down towards target, but that is the bare minimum that the public should expect. And so, with the greatest of respect to my colleagues on the other side of the House, we don't think Conservative ministers should be starting the victory lap and popping the champagne today. They've got more work to do so that people at home start to feel the benefit of an economy that we obviously think should be back on track.
To be fair, they acknowledge that. But is this a sense of the economy turning a corner? Because if it is, that poses a potential danger to you, doesn't it, come a general election?
Well, we don't think people at home think the economy's turning a corner because, quite frankly, it isn't. I mean, the fact that we've come out of complete and utter chaos with the mini-budget that sent markets spiralling, with inflation spiking at 12%, with people really suffering and paying the cost of Tory chaos. The fact we've gone from that to, a bit more of normality, is welcome, but actually our ambition in the Labour Party for the economy is much greater than that. We don't just need to be into a period of bumping along the bottom. We need to get the economy growing and back on track so that people's pay is increasing, so that they have some spare money at the end of each month because the cost of living crisis is tackled, and people have some hope once again in the future of the British economy.
Well, yeah, but to pick up on what Stephen's, hinting at there, your poll lead is narrowing as the economy is improving, and that's borne out in the latest Ipsos poll that came out in the last couple of days. You can't afford to be complacent, can you?
Well, we're not complacent, either on the economy or indeed the general election campaign. Polls always narrow as we get closer to a general election. We've been saying that for some time, whilst people keep going around saying they think the Labour Party's got the next election in the bag. We've been very, very clear that's not the case. Not one vote has been cast. And we're going to work really, really hard to continue to listen to people across the country, to set out our first steps of an incoming Labour government, and to hope to secure the support and trust of voters in every constituency across the country when polling day comes.
And yet, but you have got a bigger fight on your hands, haven't you? If the economy, and we understand the economy is growing better than we're seeing in a lot of European countries at the moment. I mean, this isn't a UK problem, it's a global issue. So Labour's going to have to come to the fore if you want to win the general election and say, well, this is how we're going to really boost the economy. This is how we're going to kickstart growth in the country from something which is there but sluggish at the moment. And you haven't really delivered on those details yet.
No, I think we have. I think was it last week or the week before, we set out our first 6 steps that a Labour government would take to turn the country around, and all of them will help on the economic growth mission. So the first, of course, is that we need to bring stability back to the economy after years of chaos that costs us all from the Conservatives. That clearing the backlog in the NHS is important in itself, but it also means that people who are out of work, either because of mental health challenges or musculoskeletal problems, will be fit and able to get back to work. We want to hire more teachers for our schools so that young people are coming out of school able to take the jobs that are available.
Forgive
I
me.
keep going through the other 3 if you wish me to do so.
No, we don't, because it's all well and good, and those pledges...
I got that impression.
Those pledges are fine. They say what you would want to do. What I'm saying is we don't know how you're going to do it.
Oh, no, we've set that out too. This is the reason there's 6 steps, because they are 6 practical steps for delivering on our bigger missions for the country. And all of them are fully funded and fully costed, and they set out clearly about how we will go about delivering them straight away if we're elected into government later this year.
Finally, before we let you go, I just wanted to bring up the story, incredible story that we're covering here on the channel of the Conservative MP Craig McKinley, who will be returning to Westminster to attend Prime Minister's questions for the first time after having suffered seriously from sepsis, having to lose both his hands and feet. An inspirational story. He's pledging to campaign to enable other people, other amputees, to access prosthetics more easily, as he was told he'd have to wait 2 years. Your thoughts about that?
I mean, it's a remarkable story, and when I heard Craig's interview last night on the TV, I was just amazed by his the positivity that he's bringing back to Parliament, wanting to be the first bionic MP in the House of Commons. He's been through a heartbreaking trauma, but it's great to see him back in the House of Commons today and wanting to be able to get on with his job, even though he suffered those horrible consequences.
It's nice to see a bit of cross-party support on that. Thank you very much indeed. Good to see you this morning, Darren Jones. Actually, it was our political editor, Christopher Hope, who got that exclusive interview with Craig McKinley, and Christopher's here. Good to see you. And what is striking with all of this is even that video that you got hold of him in his hospital bed. He's being positive. He's this incredibly, whatever you think of his politics, as an individual, what an incredible positive attribute he's got.
Such a shock. I've been going to see him in hospital since December and raised the issue of telling his story through GB News. And it's a great honour for us to broadcast that last night, and it's available to watch on our YouTube site and the website, because I think you heard Darren Jones there giving praise to somebody who, and he's nowhere near the politics of Craig McKinley.
No, yes.
I mean, he founded UKIP, right, Craig McKinley? Yeah. He's an officer of the ERG. He runs the Net Zero Scrutiny Group. He's not happy about net zero and 2050 targets. But aside from that, you have a guy there who wants to give back to his public life. And when you're with him and he's missing his arms and his feet, within 5 minutes, you don't even see that. You see the face and the guy shining out from inside. It is deeply moving when you're with him, and his passions are extraordinary. And guess what? He's going to fight the election as a Tory candidate in South Thanet, the seat he held with a majority of around 10,000 in 2019. A lesson for other Tory MPs mumbling and groaning about politics and legging it from the field when the polls go badly for the Tory party. Here's a bloke without arms and legs who's going to fight for the Tory party. It's quite an interesting lesson.
Yeah, and you get the sense he really will fight. He's got that fighting spirit. I mean, your VT was so moving for so many reasons, inspirational as well. The bit about his daughter and not being able to hold her hand touches the hearts of every parent, I'm sure. But I wonder if, for you as well, talking about daughters, I know that your own daughter lost her leg, and I wonder if the fact that he's taking up the fight for amputees is something that has resonated with you, and whether you think there is a genuine problem in serving the people who have lost limbs.
Isabel, yeah, my daughter Pollyanna has lost a leg aged 2, and that's why I was so moved by it. And as soon as I heard what had happened to him, I was keen to help, see how I could help get his story out there. Absolutely, and it's very hard to get the necessary legs and arms you need. He's getting legs on the NHS and arms privately, £100,000. You'll see them later on. In the film, he only had these kind of black lumps of plastic used for moving around. But I've seen him drink a cup of tea with them. I mean, it's amazing. He shaves himself. He's got all sorts of issues about, he can't enter a PIN number. Yeah. All the things you have to relearn, rethink about. When he walks back into Parliament today, I think in PMQs it'll be a real moment. But yeah, provision by the NHS. The NHS has a legal duty to get you moving. They'll give you crutches, give you a wheelchair, but not necessarily the best way of moving. So my wife Sarah campaigned, for example, for running blades for amputee kids, and got a fund out of George Osborne when went back in the day, and that's still going. So children now can get amputee blades, but it's difficult, and I think he'll become a real campaigner for this.
I mean, obviously, there's some pictures in the papers of him with sort of silver hands. I don't know if they're so they're the actual sort of bionic ones.
And he got them on Monday.
Right.
So when we finished making our film, he hadn't got them yet. The things you see in the film are these black lumps of plastic. The silver hands you're seeing there, which we'll see today when we're interviewing for GB News, were around since Monday. And they're the biggest blow to him, I think, he said to me, is the hands.
Yeah.
His feet, as a guy, you can wear trousers and you can't miss anything. But when you shake someone's hand and it's not a real hand, you might get a reaction. So I think that's part of the challenge he's got.
It's interesting, though, the reaction, because, again, and I keep saying this because it's, you know, it's not about pushing someone's politics. This is about an individual. And the fact that it is highlighted in such a big way, does that help change our attitudes when you... I know I've met people before who've had disabilities and fingers missing, and when they put a hand out to shake, you've got to steel yourself in a way to go, I'm not going to react to this, and just make it as normal as possible.
When I met him, I didn't know what to do with him. So
yes, exactly.
I thought, what do? You hug him, shake his hand, fist bump or something? By then it was a kind of fist bump, I suppose. He has to get around that probably. And he's called the bionic MP. That's an idea he's adopted for himself. I mean, looking at the figures on sepsis, so it does kill 40,000 a year.
Yeah. And the times the number of people who die from breast cancer, we were told this morning.
It's more than lung, bowel and breast cancer combined, 48,000. And if you think of the profile it gets, with all the campaigning and the fundraising and the cancer care, we don't even talk about sepsis, and we should do.
But to be frank, what is also wonderful about this story is it reminds us that in public life we have these sorts of people, because too often we've been talking about people who are leaving public life for some sort of indiscretion, the sleaze era coming back. This is fantastic because this guy is full of positivity, a great role model, and, you know, as Stephen says, totally aside from party politics, it just goes to show we do still have honourable people in public life.
People do go into politics for the right reasons. Let's not forget that. We get brought down by the kind of making money for themselves and the rest of it. But there is this happy story, and in a week when it's been started with this dreadful infected blood story, today Paul O'Vennell's in the Press Office Inquiry. It's a spark of a bit of brightness in the week.
Yeah. Chris, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. And look forward to seeing what you deliver later on today when you're in Parliament with him.
Of course.
It'll be fascinating to see.
OK, the time, 8:20. Let's take a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom this hour.
Breaking news for you. In Ireland, Norway and Spain have officially recognised Palestine as a separate state. Now, that's prompting Israel to recall its ambassadors from the European nations. Speaking this morning, the Irish Prime Minister Simon Harris said, today, Ireland, Norway and Spain are announcing that we recognise the state of Palestine. Each of us will undertake whatever national steps are necessary to affect that decision.
In other news this morning, the ex-Post Office boss, Paula Vanells, has arrived at the inquiry where she's set to begin 3 days of evidence. The chief executive between 2012 and 2019 will be speaking publicly about what happened to her for the first time in almost a decade, but is also expected to reveal what she knew about those wrongly accused sub-postmasters.
A former Royal Marine and Home Office employee accused of spying for the Hong Kong Intelligence Service has died in unexplained circumstances in a park in Berkshire. 37-year-old Matthew Trickett was charged with offences under the National Security Act just last week.
Right, time now for our Great British Giveaway. It's your chance to win £20,000 in cash just in time for summer. So we've been asking you this morning what you would spend it on.
Yes, you could have a dream holiday, get the garden done, get the house done, treat the family to something. Whatever you want to do, you're going to have to hurry, though, because time is ticking on your chance to make it yours. Here's how.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Oh, yes, good luck to you on that one.
Yes. Right, coming up, stay with us because we'll be talking about the former Post Office CEO, Paula Vanells. She's just arrived at the inquiry, due to give evidence a little bit later on. We'll have all the details with our reporter there in just a moment.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
I thought, and I don't know whether this is a rumour, you may not know the answer, but I thought that before she met Harry, there were rumours that she used to put that she was Caucasian on her CV.
Meghan's father had no idea that she had this Nigerian blood and thought she was just pure Californian. But so I think it may be it's obviously something she's discovered. She said she discovered it recently. That's really where it's all come from. But as always, Meghan manages to make everything about her.
Yeah.
And this really was Harry's show. This was for the Invictus Games. Nigeria is the first African country to join the Invictus Games, and it was really Harry's show. And yet, Meghan seems to take over. Well, she has a big fan base there. But I just thought it was a shame that Harry always seems to be slightly pushed in the background unless he's doing something sporty like playing basketball, playing polo.
I agree with you. And at times, Ingrid, it felt to me more like a presidential tour than a semi-royal tour because of the size of the motorcades, all the protection officers that were surrounding them. And there has been stories before, as we know, that in the United States that she has been eyeing potentially a career in Democratic Party politics.
Well, yes, there has been quite a lot of rumours about that, and maybe she is. But as she actually, to my mind, I never can remember anything that she's said because it's sort of, it's not very clear her way. I wouldn't think that she would be a great political speaker because she says a lot but doesn't say anything.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, just a few moments ago, the former Post Office CEO, Paula Vanells, arrived ahead of giving evidence at the Post Office inquiry.
Yeah, over the next 3 days, she's going to give her version of events. But what might she actually say?
Well, our reporter, Ray Addison, is there. Presumably, you saw her arriving. Something of a media scrum this morning. What can we expect to hear from inside the walls behind you?
Yeah, police were forced to make a kind of corridor for Ms. Vanells as she arrived this morning and escort her into the building. Media shouting questions at her, but no comment from Ms. Vanells at this stage. However, she now faces 3 full days of questioning and she will have to give some answers. That will certainly be expected during this inquiry. Of course, the KCs there will be asking about her role in this Horizon IT scandal which unfolded during her watch while she was chief exec of the Post Office from 2012 to 2019. And yesterday, a major development, emails emerging which seemed to suggest that she knew about the wrongful convictions in October of 2013, just over a year before she gave evidence to MPs, where she said that there was nothing wrong with the Horizon system and she had seen no evidence of miscarriages of justice. So that will be one of the key areas of focus, no doubt, over the next 3 days. Now, former Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi has said that he believes the email will be seen as the smoking gun, that a cover-up did take place, and he said he hopes Ms Venables will finally admit the truth. Now, as we know, more than 700 sub-postmasters were prosecuted by the Post Office, many handed criminal convictions as well. That's between 1999 and 2015, because Fujitsu's Horizon IT system made it appear as though money was missing at their branches when there had been no criminality at all. Now, the prosecutions continued under Ms Venables, despite her repeatedly being told that this simply did not make any sense. Now, she was made a CBE back in the 2019 New Year's Honours List for her work for the Post Office and contribution to charity as well, but she voluntarily handed that back when 1.2 million people signed a petition saying that she should do so. So far, she hasn't spoken in detail about her role in this scandal, but she has previously apologised for the devastation caused. And we also heard that she was set to release 50 additional documents, which no doubt will be pored over and will form part of the questioning here over the next few days. So in particular, she's going to be quizzed on her knowledge of the ability for Fujitsu employees to remotely access the Horizon IT system, and of course any alleged false evidence that was given by expert witnesses during the Post Office prosecution. And also another key thing that we also saw in that ITV drama series, which seemed to bring all of this to the attention of the general public and the media too, the behaviour of the Post Office's investigators. So a tough 3 days ahead for Ms Venables.
OK, Ray, thanks very much indeed. Worth remembering, you know, she's an ordained priest in the Church of England. She was touted to be Bishop of London not very long ago. So I can only hope, with that in mind, she speaks the absolute truth.
A little bit of humility.
And if she's got something, you know, if there's something unsaid that she should have said, I hope she's got the guts to be honest about it.
I also want to bring to everybody's attention the Met Office. They've been issuing a few weather warnings this morning. We've got a yellow warning in place for the southern part of the country, but actually an amber warning, which includes a threat to life across Wales and northwest England from midday today. We are expecting a significant amount of water. We'll have a forecast a little bit later on in the programme, but that is the latest from the Met Office today.
If you don't need to go out, just don't today. It's really not worth it. The roads are really waterlogged. It's been raining all night, so it's dangerous on the roads. Just be careful.
Chelsea Flower Show, keeping all of those flowers nice out in the pouring rain. What a shame.
Well, it's
in
good
May,
they're getting
don't
watered.
expect it. Bit too much. Bit too much water today.
Right, we've got the sport with Paul Coit in just a couple of minutes.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, there's a lane closed westbound for emergency bridge repairs between junctions 22 and 21 from Rishworth Moor to Milnrow, causing queues. Trains on the East Coast Main Line have been stopped between Doncaster and Grantham because of an incident. On the M60 in Greater Manchester, there's a lane closed on the anti-clockwise exit at junction 12 for the westbound M62 at the Eccles interchange after an accident. There are queues taking roughly 3/4 an hour from junction 19 at Hayward. In Derbyshire on the A38, there's a lane closed westbound from the A61 at Little Eaton Island to the A6 at Palm Court Island, north of Derby, for emergency repairs after a lorry caught fire. It's taking around an hour in queues towards there. In Buckinghamshire, the A40 is partly blocked westbound by an accident just before the M40 at the Denham roundabout, and trains aren't running between Avonmouth and Severn Beach because of a points failure. It's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel. I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel. I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Time now to go through all the sports. Paul Coit is in the studio. Welcome back, Coity. Still confident about the Euros? Just checking in on you.
What, my percentage of England, the chance of England winning the Euros? I'm going up to about 90%. Is that OK?
Come on.
Is that good enough?
100% in the six.
I've never been 100.
OK.
But 98-ish. I do think we will win. I do. I think that... God, but now the more I question myself.
All right, well, we'll keep checking in on that.
Absolutely, because the new squad was announced, well, I say the 33. So they're going to knock 33 down to 26 for June the 8th, which is just before. So then there's going to be a few that are going to be disappointed. So there's probably been a couple of the new ones because there's some debutants that have been involved. So there may be a couple of those. But then the main story is Marcus Rashford, who's got the elbow. Because he has not had a good season, and it makes sense. You know, you can't just rely on...
Well, it does, but why the change in tactics?
Well, I don't know where this... It's the thing is, you can rely on so many people. You can't just take everybody that's played well for you over the years, age, and also it just... Is he going to deliver? Probably not. And there's other players that have played better in those sort of positions, like Cole Palmer for Chelsea, who's been terrific. Whereas Cole Palmer, I will move on beautifully.
Beautiful segue there.
To Cole Palmer, who has sent a text or sent a tweet, or an X or whatever you would call it these days, about Mauricio Pochettino, wishing him well because Mauricio Pochettino has now left Chelsea. And I think Cole Palmer, would probably find Mauricio Pochettino instrumental or had a lot to do with the fact of his success this year. Now, he's an excellent young player, but that's what Mauricio Pochettino does. He works well with young players. So he's been let go by Chelsea. Just as things are beginning to click, 5 games they've won on the trot. Honestly, I just think it's madness. I think there's probably part of Mauricio that thinks this is not really the place I want to be. So maybe Manchester United, because of the managerial merry-go-round, whether Ten Hag is going to stick around, maybe he could go there. There's always going to be places.
There?
I think...
Poison chalice.
Well... Is it a poison chalice? It's almost a new start, though. This is the thing, with Jim Radcliffe coming in and saying, right, we're going to start all things again. Let's start with a new manager. Maybe Mauricio, maybe he's going to stick with Eric Ten Hag. But Mauricio Pochettino, I just think it's a very strange decision by Chelsea. Even if Mauricio wanted to go, try and convince him to stay, because he is a very, very good manager, and it's just beginning to click. And now Chelsea fans are going to have to think, right, here we go again. We'll have to start again and build.
Okay.
Oh, dear me.
So for fans of other clubs, is thinking, well,
yeah,
ain't so bad.
yes, please, have some of that.
Yeah.
Mind you, who's going to be manager of the season? Or who is manager of the season?
Well, it is Pep Guardiola.
Oh.
I think it's a bit of a
damp squib.
It is really, because, you know, they won the Premier League again for the 4th time, but, yeah, there's other managers that you think could possibly have done something, or they could give it to. I'm just. What do you think? What do you think? Possibly? You think,
well, I don't know. I don't know. But I'm all for Matt Beard.
Matt Beard is the Liverpool women's manager.
Yeah.
Now they've come 4th, but they were doing they were good, and now he's turned things around. So maybe that's what they should be looking at other managers, maybe like Unai Emery, possibly at Aston Villa, who's done a great job. But it only seems to be awarded to the manager that wins the Premier League, which Pep Guardiola seems to do.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Sometimes maybe an award for effort.
Well, no,
just
you
because
can't
they don't
just have an award for effort. I'm sorry.
Or just because they're nice.
Attainment.
How about an award because they're quite nice?
They should all be given awards.
Everybody given awards, yes. Just for having a go.
Yeah.
Just for trying hard.
Oh, no, nonsense.
Goodness sake. Cricket, Jofra Archer. He is, of course, our super speed bowler. Tell us about him.
Yeah, Jofra has had injuries over the years. The thing is, he hasn't played a lot, had hardly played at all for England. So England play Pakistan tonight at Headingley and Leeds. So they're back again. So it's a T20 because the T20 World Cup is this year. Now, Jofra Archer is an amazing bowler, but he's had a lot of injuries because he's so fast. He's so quick. Look, you see it?
Yeah, you got the grip.
Do that. That's the grip. That's the grip. So he's had problems with his elbow. So and it seems to. Oh, I've got to say, there we are. Let raise his head, but raise his elbow. But the thing is, it's caused him a lot of problems. But if you think the speed, the velocity, and what he's doing, that's caused him a lot of problems. He also had a bad injury from a fish tank. Did you know about that?
What?
He had a horrendous fish tank injury in 2021.
How's that work?
Well, because he was cleaning the fish tank, and apparently he got glass in his finger. I don't know whether the fish tank, because I'd be more worried about the fish.
Well, if you're a world-class bowler, you worry about your hand.
Yeah, well, the fish was worried, but then 3 seconds later, the fish forgot all about it. So then he got glass in his finger, which is what you don't want if you're a world-class bowler.
100%.
He had to have an operation. He's been unlucky, but anyway.
That is more than. I'd say that's reckless.
It is reckless.
You don't
what,
put
from
your
the fish
hand in the
or
fish
from
tank
Jofra?
If you're a world-class bowler.
But by the way, the fish is not available for the T20 series this year, unfortunately.
Okay.
Right. So we'll have a look at finals tonight. It's Europa League finals, isn't it?
It is the Europa League final tonight, which happens in Dublin, which is Bayer Leverkusen, who will play Atalanta. Do you know where Atalanta is?
It's a football club.
Yes, whereabouts?
Greece, isn't it?
Italian, from Bergamo, north of Milan.
Bergamo.
That's where Atalanta
So it's not
is.
Bergamo.
Sounded very like Georgia,
not
USA.
Yes.
Not to be confused with.
Not to be confused. But anyway, Bayer Leverkusen, who have been unbelievable this year. They haven't lost all season in the Bundesliga. So they've beaten Bayern Munich. They were in the final of the German Cup. They have been magnificent. Now, Bayer Leverkusen, they're going to be hot favourites to win that tonight, so it's in Dublin. But the other thing is Jeremy Frimpong, who plays for Bayer Leverkusen. No.
Jeremy Ping-pong?
No, Frimpong.
Frimpong.
We won't get the sports mixed up here. So Jeremy Frimpong has bought all the other players that play for Bayer Leverkusen matching rings.
Oh, no.
Look at that. Isn't that just beautiful? Matching rings for everybody.
Oh, God.
And it's got the name, has the name.
I mean, they're not small, are they?
Oh, no, they're
very American.
Yeah, and cost a few quid as well, I'm sure.
Well, I'm sure.
Name and number. On one side of the ring, it says Factory 11 Football Passion, which is Bayer Leverkusen's motto, carved on the other side. And the thing is, though, if let's face it, if you have taste, you're not going to really want to wear one of those, are you? So if you're going into training and Jeremy's going, where's your ring? Oh, I left it at home. But, it's like all these matching...
Oh, it's horrid.
It's like Alvin Stardust used to wear,
yeah.
you know?
Oh, no, it's not nice.
But, I mean, he does have giant diamond earrings, so he's obviously into the bling-bling.
Exactly. Would you wear one, though, if you got one for your anniversary? If
what, giant
if maybe
diamond
Liam, but if it was all diamond, that it was big, and it was all
big and diamond.
Yes,
I'm in.
of course you'd wear it. Yeah.
What are you talking about? That wasn't big and diamond.
Name and number on the side.
No, no.
GB News on the other side.
Would you wear that?
Oh, absolutely.
OK, good. Right, on that note, we're going to take a little break. Thank you very much to
I feel slightly...
Come on, you love a diamond. Don't give me all that nonsense.
He doesn't want to be branded.
Just because we haven't bought you one as well. That's it. Me and Isabel have got matching rings. We'll buy you one as well.
We'll let you in there on the club. Don't you worry about that. Right, Norman Baker, Renee Hunderkamp, they're joining our club this morning. They're going to be going through making the news with us after this.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Harry and Meghan have just finished their supposedly official royal tour of Nigeria. They released a statement thanking the African state for the first of many memorable trips. One memorable moment, for me at least, was their absolute refusal to sing the British national anthem.
The royal tour of Africa is all about Harry and Meghan. It's a massive public display and photo opportunity for them to bolster their flagging image. Now, remember, Patrick, they're about to launch 2 new programs for Netflix, one all about polo and one all about cooking. So what better than them to launch themselves on the world stage, make themselves relevant once again? They have to maintain their image of being royal and being relevant. That is their USP. Without that, there's nothing else. Now, the Foreign Office should keep their eye on this because they should be advising the High Commissioners in all Commonwealth countries and telling them that this is not a royal visit. At royal visits, they play the national anthem. Why was the national anthem played at their visit? It wasn't a royal visit. They didn't sing the words to it. I'm not sure whether Meghan knows all the words to the national anthem. I'm sure Harry does, but they didn't.
To be honest, he looked like he had to be revived there.
Isn't that embarrassing? And certainly embarrassing for our country. You know, I just don't get it, Patrick. I don't get why they are launching themselves as a royal couple on the world stage, pretending to be still working royals when they're not. I think the king should have something to say to his son about his son's position on such a public platform in a Commonwealth country.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
At 8:46, let's see what's making the news this morning with Norman Baker and Renee Hunderkamp. Good to see you both once again. Let's have a look, Norman, at the front of the Times, should we?
Yes.
Number 10's being accused of trying to placate the Prime Minister.
Shock horror.
Yes, what a surprise. Partly the job of
this is there's an interesting story here for 3 reasons. Johnny Mercer, the Veterans Minister, wrote to Number 10 to say they were giving too much attention to the Prime Minister and they should be prioritising what he called more popular colleagues, Kenny Badenoch, amongst them. That's one interesting aspect, that the Prime Minister was able to corral so much attention. Of course, the Prime Minister does. On the other hand, there are other cabinet ministers who might be more popular, and it might make more sense for the Tory party to use those. Johnny Mercer says that the average performers shouldn't be used. He calls that Mark Harper an average performer. I think Mark Harper's quite good, actually. As Transport Secretary, he's one of the better members of the government, in my view. Anyway, that's one aspect of the story. Second aspect was, how do we know about this? Because Johnny Mercer was writing this on his laptop on a train, and somebody took a picture of it and sent it to the Times.
No.
Which suggests that, I don't know how he managed to do that, but clearly the ability of cameras to capture things from some distance now is quite astonishing.
An invasion of privacy?
Yeah, of course it is.
Sure you could...
So the guy who took the picture not...
Or maybe it's
committing an offence?
Well, I don't know if committing an offence. Isn't it an offence to use your camera on a train? Probably not. But in any case, I mean, we've had these stories before, someone coming out of number 10 with a piece of paper in their hand.
Yeah.
Journalists capture it. So people should be very, very careful with cameras these days.
What caught my eye about this story was they said that they're acting as though Sunak was still as popular as when he took office.
Yes.
I'm not sure he was ever popular.
No, he wasn't. He lost to Liz Truss first time round, and he was put in there because there was no alternative, and he's never been very popular.
Yeah.
No.
But with who, I suppose, is the question. Popular with the
wife?
Membership, popular with the country as a whole, I don't know.
I don't know if popular with anybody particularly, to be honest about it.
Renee, this story is really interesting. It caught our eye last time. I'm going to get it in before we run out of time, because, you know, we were talking about whether or not this is, I don't think it's tax evasion necessarily, but Anne Robinson is so fed up with inheritance tax that she is giving a lot of it away.
Yes, so she is estimated to have a £50 million nest egg, and she says that she's not sure if that's true, but it doesn't matter because she's decided
She's got so much money she doesn't know where it is.
She doesn't know where it is, and she's given it to her children and her grandchildren, and she would much rather live a healthy, happy life. She says she doesn't need much money and see her family happy in so doing. And I actually think there's a lot to this. You know, I often say to my mum, who tells me...
I bet you do.
She's got, she tells me she's got this squirreled away
Give me
here
the
and
money.
I tell her to spend it.
Oh,
You
right.
know, I say, don't keep it, spend it, enjoy life.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you were saying to me, Stephen. You'd just rather just really have a great time.
Yeah.
And I think we should worry less about what we're going to leave, because lots of it's going to go to the tax man. Anne's found a way to avoid that, and I think it's if you give gifts
7 years.
7 years, and you survive 7 years,
Yeah,
there's
the
no
advice is
inheritance.
give away early, give away a lot. But the danger is once you've given away a lot, you really can't afford to die. So then there's that anxiety for 7 years.
Yes.
But also,
will I make it?
Well,
I
plus
think...
you need the people you give it to be trustworthy enough not to just spend it, because you need it back.
Do you think?
Yeah.
No.
So it's only a semi-gift?
So it's a semi-gift, so say, well, it's technically yours, but I'll just hold that money for me.
If you've got £50 million to give away and you keep £5 million yourself, you've got plenty of money for yourself, and you can put £5 million away without worrying about it. And of course, if you were the member of the royal family, the Queen or whatever, she paid there was no inheritance tax paid on her estate at all.
Yeah, it's extraordinary,
they're
isn't it?
exempt from inheritance tax.
I do think it's a pernicious tax. I really do. I think it's the worst thing in the world that you lose somebody, and then someone who's worked really, really hard, and we know that particularly the older generation often socially, the mobility socially was much more extreme. They would often come from nothing and end up with quite a lot, and then to have to give half of that away almost straight away upon death, it seems a lot.
And also, let's say it was your family home that you grew up in, all your memories are there, and you can be forced by inheritance tax to sell it when you might not want to do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a different view on that, if I may, which is that tax money has to come to the government from somewhere, and it's probably better to tax someone who's no longer with us than someone who's still alive.
But yes, except it's the people who were alive who are actually being taxed in the...
Well, they aren't. I mean, because they didn't have it. What they're not getting is a gift that they would have otherwise have had.
Yeah, but in the great scheme of things as well, inheritance tax doesn't bring in that much revenue.
Well, in that case, why worry about it?
Well,
inheritance tax applies to people who have got quite a lot of money. Most people will not pay inheritance tax.
Not anymore, yeah.
You know, now, most people's property will hit that bracket.
Certainly in London.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't... Not many properties.
So that argument used to stand, but I don't think it stands anymore, Norman.
Let us know at home what you think. It does divide opinion, but to be honest, there doesn't seem much appetite from any political party. Every now and then, when things are going badly, it sort of gets briefed out from CCHQ that they might tinker with this, but I don't think... because it applies to so few people,
The basic problem with political parties is that if you do roll back on inheritance tax, Absolutely. The people who will benefit most are the richest, and that's why it's not been done.
OK, let's have a look at Labour, Norman. This is in the Daily Mail. They want to build more new towns.
Yes, this is Angela Rayner saying that they want to build a whole string of towns. Gordon Brown actually promised a whole series of towns in 2007, which never got built. They got cancelled by David Cameron. But there's an issue, of course. We know there isn't enough housing. We know there are people who are struggling to find somewhere to live. But we also know that the idea of dumping a whole lot of housing on areas is deeply unpopular with the areas in which it's been identified.
The most interesting element of this, I think, is the fact that she has promised, I don't know if this is going to happen or not, but she has promised that they will not be these kind of mono buildings that will all look the same, that you could see the same in Leicester as you would see in Newport, all the same developer. It would try and embrace the kind of, dare I say, King Charles approach to housing estates where there's a bit more architectural interest and diversity.
Yeah, and also some of this will be controversial because it's allegedly going on to Greenbelt, but it's not proper Greenbelt. So it's old petrol stations and things like that. And actually, we need housing. We need new towns, I think. I think this is more likely to get approval if it's in an area where they can justify that the land is not beautiful, you know, idyllic countryside, than building blocks of flats here and there and everywhere.
Yeah. I think the real issue, however, is does it meet local need? If it meets local need, people are far more supportive of it than if it's people coming in from whoever.
For those local people, does it, like on my lane, £23 million given to the farmer, Soldersfield, huge housing estate, no new schools, no new doctor surgery, no new facilities or parking at the local station. So it's actually not benefited the local people.
No, if you get a big new town, then you can actually build an infrastructure. If you have higgledy-piggledy bits here and there, you don't get that. But the issue is there's a whole lot of housing going up and not far from me. 3- and 4-bedroom executive houses. That's not for local people. They're not going to buy it. But the local need is people who've lived near forever, young people who want to get on the housing ladder. They want cheap housing, flats and so on. They don't want these 3- 4-bedroom
maybe
houses.
new towns are the way forward. We shall see. Norman Baker, running Huntercamp, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Let's get a check on the weather. Here's Alex.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your latest GB News weather update, brought to you by the Met Office on this rather wet Wednesday. Heavy rain's going to spill across many parts of the country, and that does bring the risk of some flooding. It's already a wet start across parts of eastern England, and that rain spilling its way north and westwards across many areas as we go through the day. The rain is really going to be persistent and intense for some of us, and we are likely to see some impacts in association with such wet weather. There will also be some showers around towards the north and also the south of the country, but the sunshine is going to be relatively limited. Temperatures not as high as they have been recently, and under the wet weather it's going to feel pretty unpleasant. Like I said, some showers developing, especially towards the south. Some of these could turn heavy and thundery as we go through the evening. Some frequent lightning, perhaps even some large hail to watch out for here. The greatest cause for concern, though, will be the very wet weather across parts of England and Wales and into southern Scotland too. Here, the persistent rain could lead to totals building up as we go through today into tomorrow in excess of 100 millimetres in some places, especially over the high ground of North Wales. We are likely to see some impacts from it. Towards the northwest of Scotland, there will be some showers as we go through the day, and again these could be a little bit heavy at times too. Through the evening and overnight, the rain does gradually make its way north and westwards, but it takes quite a while to do so, which is why we're going to continue to see those rainfall totals building up and why there is the risk of some impacts, including some flooding. Towards the south, as we go through the night, it should turn largely dry. There may be some clear breaks, but on the whole staying quite cloudy. Temperatures for most not dropping a huge amount. Thursday does look like it will be another wet day for the northern 2/3 of the country. Perhaps the rain not quite as heavy as through today, but nonetheless it is going to be quite a wet picture, and that still brings the risk of some impacts because of the unsettled weather. Drier and perhaps brighter towards the south. Temperatures still not quite as high as they were earlier on in the week, but feeling pleasant enough in any sunshine. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, there's a lane closed westbound for emergency bridge repairs between junctions 22 and 21 from Rishworth Moor to Milnrow, causing queues. Train services on the East Coast Main Line are suspended between Doncaster and Grantham because of an incident. In Cheshire, the A49 is closed each way along Tarpley Road at Oakmere after an accident. In Derbyshire on the A38, there's a lane closed westbound north of Derby between the A61 at Little Eaton Island and the A6 at Palm Court Island for emergency repairs after a lorry caught fire earlier. It's taking around an hour in queues towards there from just before Belper. On the A1M in Hertfordshire, there's a lane closed northbound after an accident between junctions 1 and 2 off the M25, causing queues, and train services are suspended between Avonmouth and Severn Beach because of a points failure. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking? Not a line, I never won a penny in my life.
I don't know what to say.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocks me. This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Morning to you, it's 9 o'clock on Wednesday, the 22nd of May.
You're tuned into Breakfast this morning with Stephen Dixon and Isabel Webster. Thank you for your company.
Well, today, an inspiring return. The Tory MP Craig McKinley reveals all about his sepsis battle, which has left him without hands or feet, and he plans to return to Parliament today.
I'm hoping people might give me the benefit of the doubt and say, that man's been a fighter for himself. He's damn well going to fight for me. I'm going to give him my support. The bionic MP. Bionic MP is what I want to be.
UK inflation has dropped to 2.3% in April. That's down from 3.2% back in March. So does it lessen the chance of a June interest rate cut?
There's much more work to be done. Of course, we welcome it coming back down towards target, but that is the bare minimum that the public should expect.
The ex-Post Office boss Paula Venables arrives at the inquiry as she begins to give 3 days of evidence today.
Heavy persistent rain is going to cause some major problems for quite a few of us today. There are a number of warnings out. I'll have the details coming up.
It's been a fantastic programme this morning to be able to lead on a story that is about a politician with a really inspiring story. This is about the Conservative MP Craig McKinley, who today returns to Parliament after a life-threatening battle with sepsis.
Yeah, it's been so bad that he's had to have both his hands and both feet removed and been replaced with prosthetics.
Well, McKinley and his wife spoke exclusively to our GB News political editor, Christopher Hope, about his journey. A warning, though, that this report contains some sensitive images.
But one day, his life changed suddenly.
It was one of those days that will be etched on Craig's memory for life. It was the end of September 2023. He was getting ready to go on holiday with his family. He started to feel unwell, and unexpectedly, Craig had contracted sepsis.
So the Grim Reaper let me survive, but he's taken his payment in 4 of my limbs. But that's the way it is. Plenty worse things happening.
That is it. No way back. And yes, he was very matter of fact. He accepted that they black, they not any use anymore. And that's it. So he had a very long operation. And he did come back without those black arms and legs. And by then I was fine. I just knew that is it. That's the new future, new life begins.
When your body just isn't doing something you want it to do and you think you can do it. I mean, when I had skin grafts, and they're very painful. Funny enough, skin grafts have been more painful than anything else, more painful than the amputation. And just trying to transfer off the bed onto a wheelchair, and you're sort of bouncing across, and it is so painful. And you are in tears of frustration that this is just, why is it so bad? Why isn't this getting better? But no, I've been pretty much cheerful throughout. I just think I'm probably coming to the end of my tether of being under the care of an institution of the NHS for so long. Big sadness to me is holding little one's hand, going to school. Can't do that anymore. We can sort of hold hands, but I can't feel that she's holding. That's a little specialness that's never coming back. You know, that touch of hands has gone. Being an MP at the end of the day, I hope is about what you got up here rather than knocking on every door, much as I'd like to. But yeah, life will have to change. And if it means more time with family, that has got to be a change for the absolute good, and I'm looking forward to that.
Heck, I mean, it really is quite something. And it crosses party lines on this one. There'll be support from across the House, which is important, I think. Let's talk to our political correspondent, Olivia Utley, who's in Westminster for us this morning. I mean, this is the most remarkable tale of someone fighting through against the odds, but also determined to get back to what is, you know, a difficult life being an MP.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's incredible that he's going to be back in Parliament just 6 months after having this enormous operation which robbed him of all of his limbs. Just to put it in perspective, there are only half a dozen people or so in the UK every year who have to have all of their limbs amputated and still manage to survive. So this is really, really extraordinary surgery that Craig McKinley had to go through. And as you can see, I mean, he's almost taking it in his stride. He said he's been cheerful throughout, although he does talk about that sadness of not being able to feel when his daughter is holding his hand anymore. And I think, as you say, it's going to be hugely inspiring on all sides of the House. He's going to be in Prime Minister's Questions today at 12 o'clock, and his wife Katie and daughter Olivia, who's going to be 5 tomorrow, will be watching him from the gallery, and I'm sure they'll be very proud indeed. As you say, Stephen, it's a very difficult life for an MP, and particularly perhaps for someone like Craig McKinley. He has a majority of about 10,000 in South Thanet. That would normally be quite an easy majority to defend, but we are living in quite extraordinary times, and Labour have overturned far, far bigger Conservative majorities. Craig McKinley has been a very active MP since 2005. He is a staunch Eurosceptic, a really big voice on the Vote Leave campaign, still a member of the European Scrutiny Committee, and I'm sure his Brexiteer MPs in Parliament will be very pleased to have him back.
OK, Olivia, thanks very much.
Well, earlier we spoke to the CEO of the UK Sepsis Trust, Dr Ron Daniels.
It's astonishing, isn't it? We have a condition here that affects nearly 250,000 people across the UK each year and claims 48,000 lives. And just for context, breast cancer, and I'm not diminishing how horrible that can be, claims 11,000 lives. So sepsis is 4 times more prolific as a killer. I think the reason we don't hear about it is because it doesn't really belong to any particular speciality of doctors. It touches every aspect of healthcare, and therefore there's no professional group to be championing it, which means it needs an advocacy organisation like ours.
Is it also just incredibly hard to spot and often creeps up on people with very little warning? I mean, my understanding is that it's when your own immune system starts to attack the tissues, but by the time people realise that their temperature isn't just flu or something, they can often be in quite a perilous state.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And my professional background is an intensive care doctor, and I do empathise with the view that it can be really hard to spot. It arises in people of any age, people with whether or not they've got underlying illness, and it can arise as a consequence of any infection. So it presents hugely differently. To get this right demands not only that we have health professionals who are well trained and have access to the right diagnostics to make the diagnosis, but also members of the public who've heard of sepsis, know it's an emergency and know when and how to access healthcare.
So what do we do? I mean, what do we look out for? And at what point do you say this needs to be looked at urgently?
Well, you mentioned that in the early stages it can look a bit like flu. And in that situation, it's trust your instinct. You've probably had infections before. You know what it feels like. But if something doesn't feel right, and particularly if you've never felt so unwell before, go to 111, make an appointment to see your GP and just ask, could it be sepsis?
We keep saying all morning, it's remarkable. Actually, loads of you getting in touch. Duncan says, Craig is, in my opinion, a shining example of courage and determination. Wish him all the best for the future. Hope he gets a standing ovation at question time today. Keith says he's an absolute hero. How he can be so upbeat. What an example to us all.
And obviously a lot of the focus being on raising the profile of sepsis and the alarm for how you can spot it, but it'll also become something of a campaigner for amputees and getting access to prosthetics, and that will make him incredibly important to have that role in Parliament as well. So lots of you commenting about that as well. Keep your thoughts coming in all of that. We're just flagging as well a little bit about the weather. We've been seeing updates from the Met Office this morning. A rare amber warning, which includes a threat to life, has been issued from midday for the northwest of England and North Wales. And this means that, 70 to 90 millimetres of rain is likely on the hills and 100 and 150 mils on the mountains of North Wales. So flooding is likely and disruption as well.
I mean, heck, that's... what, 15 centimetres?
Yeah, it's a lot of rain.
It's an awful... And I tell you what, if you've been, anywhere where you've been in the country overnight, it's really just really put it down overnight. And that means, as unpleasant as it is, that if you're driving on sort of main roads, motorways, that sort of thing, there's a lot of surface water. So you've got to drive carefully. There's all that aquaplaning can happen.
Well, exactly. Very dangerous travelling conditions. And we should point out a yellow warning for the south of England, but it is just this rare amber warning for the northwest of England and the north of Wales.
Yeah, so... be careful. Right.
Yes.
Should we just cheer you up a little bit?
Yes, let's do it.
Because it's time for the giveaway. It's the biggest cash prize we've ever given away. It's £20,000 that you can spend however you like.
Yeah, you get to keep every single penny, totally tax-free. How often can you say that? But you'll have to hurry and get your entry in as time's ticking out on this one. Here's how that cash, though, could be yours.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking? Not a line, I've never won a penny in my life. I don't know what to say. Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocks me. This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Right. I tell you what I'm always entertained by. Bev Turner, you know, often... the other week she came in looking like a Charlie's Angel, and it looks fabulous. This isn't any criticism.
Where's this
looks
going?
Fabulous. Today, Karen Carpenter. I'm going Karen Carpenter. She's got flary trousers on.
Don't make me sing.
It didn't end well for Karen Carpenter.
Oh, no. Oh, come on.
You're writing her off already.
Just look at the positive, She's looking absolutely sensational.
Thank you.
Karen Carpenter.
You always look sensational.
The voice of fantastic.
Oh,
voice.
yeah.
I actually might put my jacket on by the time I come on the telly. It looks a little informal, doesn't it?
No, you look lovely.
really
You look
good.
lovely. Right, what have you got in store for us at 9:30?
More importantly...
Never mentions what I wear, does he?
Well,
Just
this is the pain of being a man in today's world. We just wear a suit.
So, obviously, Paula Venables is giving her evidence at the inquiry this morning. It just feels like the net is closing in on her as an individual a little bit.
Well, I mean, did you see the press mob around her? The police were trying to create a corridor and she could barely walk.
She had to have her CB dragged off her, effectively,
exactly.
didn't she?
And if you remember, we spoke, I think it must have been about 10 days, a week ago, the mother of the boy that was killed in the Manchester Arena bombing. She is going to be arriving at Downing Street in our time. That will no doubt be an emotional arrival in Downing Street. She must be exhausted.
And we've got Chris Hope's interview with Craig McKinley coming up at 10:30, the bionic MP. I've been working in Parliament since 1988. I've only ever known one MP in a wheelchair. Diane Begg, never known an MP with 4 limbs.
It was
extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. We look forward to that. See you at 9:30. We're going to touch on one of the stories you mentioned now, actually, because it is the 7th anniversary of the Manchester Arena attack, where 22 people lost their lives. Another 1,017 were injured.
Well, the mother of Martin Hett, who died in the attack, has been walking to Downing Street demanding stronger protections against terrorism.
Well, let's head over to our reporter, Sophie Reaper, who's been following Fegan's journey. Morning to you, Sophie.
Very good morning to you both. Yes, that walk, the final leg, is about to set off from here at Marble Arch all the way to Downing Street. And joining me now is the woman of the hour, Fegan Murray. Very good morning to you. How are you doing, first of all?
I'm okay. I'm glad it's only 2-3 miles today because my hip's killing me, my blisters are only just healing. And, yeah, I'm ready for this to come to an end, the walk.
Well, it's been an incredible journey, almost 186 miles. Now,
More than that, yeah.
Of course, when we joined you at the very start at the arena, you said to me that you wanted to send a message to the PM. Do you think you've done that?
Well, yes, because, you know, walking all that distance is hard work. And I was very serious to see it right through the end, because the message behind this is I'll do anything to get the point across to you, even walk halfway across the country.
Well, of course, the message was all about Martin's Law and improving security at UK venues. Do you want to just talk to our viewers a little bit about how important it is that we improve security, especially on the 7th anniversary of the arena attack?
Yeah, I mean, the 7th anniversary feels like it's happened yesterday, to be honest. But it is important because we've had, since 2017, when the attack happened, we've had over 40 attacks that were stopped just on time before they were about to happen. So to me, the law of averages dictates that sooner or later an attack is not going to be able to be stopped. And I don't want this to happen, because the effects of a terrorist attack on families are life-changing and devastating. So if they can be stopped, they should be stopped. And Martin's Law inevitably, undoubtedly, will save lives.
If Martin were here today, what do you think he would say about this?
Well, I'd hope he'd be proud of what we achieved, and he'd also smile, but he'd be, I think, very pleased that something positive came out of his death.
And when you get to Downing Street later today, what are you hoping the PM's going to say to you?
Well, I'm going to ask him to give me a firm date or a promise it's going to be introduced in this parliamentary session into Parliament. It is really important that he commits to a date now, because 18 months ago in a phone call he promised me he will see this through as soon as possible. He said he fully supports it. I need him to keep to his promise.
Well, Fegan, thank you so much for joining us. You're an amazing woman and it's an amazing achievement, so thank you so much. We'll be following Fegan today and meeting her later on to find out exactly what Rishi Sunak says about Martin's Law.
OK, Sophie, thanks very much indeed. Such an important thing that she's trying to achieve there. And anyone, I've told you this before, my niece was at that concert, and it took her a long time to... She wasn't injured, but it took a long time to get over the shock. And with my brother and sister-in-law sat outside waiting to pick her up to take her home.
Well, they must have been
and hearing all that go off.
I mean, how
horrific.
do you ever get over that, I suppose? And it's still just... It blows my mind, really, that happened here in this country and that children largely suffered as a result of that. Really, really sad, but fantastic that she's made her way all the way to Downing Street.
Yeah. Now, still to come for you... I don't know whether to apologise or not. It's double Andrew Pierce today. He's coming back to talk about his new book, Finding Margaret. We'll tell you more in a minute.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Pandora, welcome to the show. There's no getting away from it. Middle Wallop has delivered a massive wallop in the face for Prince Harry today. Yet more proof he is becoming very much the prodigal son, the one who's been cast into the wilderness.
Yeah, it's just the reality of it. And Prince Harry knew this when he left as senior member of the working family, that he would have to give up his honorary military title. So even though this wasn't his title, lots of people for many years thought, well, it would make sense for him to have the title. So unfortunately, this is just now the reality for Harry. And it's brutal. And of course, it's going to hit home because it's very personal for him. And I'm sure that's not lost on the King or his brother William, but it's just the fact of reality. And to be quite frank with you, it's not like William has gone in there and gone in there without, due service. He's also had military background. He also has military experience as well with helicopters. So for Harry, of course, this will most definitely hurt.
But, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Pandora. This is a case of making your bed and lying in it. When you stand down from royal duties and those military roles that come with that, they fall by the wayside. This is the destiny that you chose, and he chose a destiny which involved Netflix and Nigeria, not one of duty. So, you make your bed and you lie in it, right?
Despite what many people's opinions might be about Harry, he has served in the military and he has served for our country. But so has William. And William is a working member of the royal family. And if anybody was going to fit this role, now that Harry's not part of the royal family working side of it, then it would be William. And William does deserve this.
Now, when I was told that Andrew Pierce was writing a book called Finding Margaret, you'd forgive me for thinking, actually, this was a book about Margaret Thatcher.
Yes.
Because we all know you as Tory boy, and, she's your favourite person.
I love her.
And it took me quite a while to realise this was actually about a very personal story about finding your birth mother.
Yeah.
It's been serialised in the Mail. Of course, you are consultant editor there, and it's been incredibly moving reading those extracts to the point where I've had tears in my eyes. But your book's now out.
It is. Yeah, and it's my first book. I've never written a book before.
Well, you should do more. It's quite good.
Yeah. I didn't find her till I was nearly 50 because I agonised over my own mum who adopted me, who loved me to bits, and I loved her. I didn't want to do anything that could ever make her think that her love hadn't been enough.
Yes, that's the issue.
It's a terrible dilemma, but I just thought, in the end, I'm going to find her. I didn't tell Mum what I did. I'm going to find her because she needed to know, my birth mother, that I was OK, because I laboured under the illusion that every birthday she'd be thinking, how is that little boy? Because she put me in the orphanage when I was 5 weeks old. She kept visiting me until I was 2, when she finally decided she had to give me up for adoption. Not quite sure why. So I did find her when I was nearly 50. I met up with her. It was an extraordinary meeting. She didn't ask me a single thing. Not one question about where I was brought up, who brought me up. I thought perhaps it's too distressing for her to find about how happy a life I'd had. And I then subsequently arranged to see her 3 more times, and she didn't show up, which was very hard, very difficult.
So why? She kept saying she would come. Yes,
she kept coming,
and I'll see you then.
And she would. I think she panicked. She was terrified about people finding out. She kept this secret. She got married while I was still in the orphanage to a man who never knew about me. She had 4 children who never knew about me. They only found out a few weeks ago. Had to have that conversation with them. I think it's fair to say they're in a state of shock.
Right.
But they understood why I'd written this story because, look, if you are adopted, you should try and find your birth parent, I think, because it helps you sort of know who you are.
But even when, because obviously people will have this idea that they're going to find a birth parent and it's going to be, you know, this sort
of... Like Davina McCall on TV.
Yeah, but in fact...
It wasn't like that.
No, but does it still make it worthwhile doing?
It does, because I'm glad I did it, because, don't forget, objective was to let Margaret know I was OK, and she saw that for herself. And she was very taken by how handsome I was, she said.
She had a lovely voice.
A lovely voice. And I asked her, do I look like my birth father? She said, I can't remember. She couldn't remember about the birth father.
She wouldn't give you any details about him.
She couldn't remember why I was in that orphanage for 2.5 years. It's an extraordinary story, actually. It's a bit like a thriller, because there's twists and turns at every stop. And I've found the so-called the family of my so-called birth father, if that's true, because he was killed just a few weeks after I went into the orphanage. Was that convenient?
Well, that was
he a
quite
toe
common
tag
at the
father?
time. Was it a toe tag father? This idea of finding... And in the hospital where your mother worked,
his body came in, and he'd been struck by a van and killed instantly. Extraordinary thing about my birth, when I started to... I thought she'd have been 17 or 18, 19. She was 3 weeks from her 35th birthday when she had me.
And 35th?
35th birthday, yeah.
So
I mean, you didn't get single mothers of 35 in 1961.
But has this left you with more answers, more questions than answers?
Yeah. So maybe there's another book.
But is that frustrating? Out of time,
it is.
But is that frustrating?
It is frustrating. That's my great frustration about meeting Margaret, that she didn't tell me even any of the answers I wanted. But that was her choice.
Yeah. Andrew, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your
But don't move, because obviously you're back with Britain's Newsroom in just a couple of minutes. I'm going to be back 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. You're getting the day off.
I'm not. I've got a day off, yes, so I'll see you next week.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your latest GB News weather update, brought to you by the Met Office on this rather wet Wednesday. Heavy rain's going to spill across many parts of the country, and that does bring the risk of some flooding. It's already a wet start across parts of eastern England, and that rain spilling its way north and westwards across many areas as we go through the day. The rain is really going to be persistent and intense for some of us, and we are likely to see some impacts in association with such wet weather. There will also be some showers around towards the north and also the south of the country, but the sunshine is going to be relatively limited. Temperatures not as high as they have been recently, and under the wet weather it's going to feel pretty unpleasant. Like I said, some showers developing, especially towards the south. Some of these could turn heavy and thundery as we go through the evening. Some frequent lightning, perhaps even some large hail to watch out for here. The greatest cause for concern, though, will be the very wet weather across parts of England and Wales and into southern Scotland too. Here, the persistent rain could lead to totals building up as we go through today into tomorrow in excess of 100 millimetres in some places, especially over the high ground of North Wales. We are likely to see some impacts from it. Towards the northwest of Scotland, there will be some showers as we go through the day, and again these could be a little bit heavy at times too. Through the evening and overnight, the rain does gradually make its way north and westwards, but it takes quite a while to do so, which is why we're going to continue to see those rainfall totals building up and why there is the risk of some impacts, including some flooding. Towards the south, as we go through the night, it should turn largely dry. There may be some clear breaks, but on the whole staying quite cloudy. Temperatures for most not dropping a huge amount. Thursday does look like it will be another wet day for the northern 2/3 of the country. Perhaps the rain not quite as heavy as through today, but nonetheless it is going to be quite a wet picture, and that still brings the risk of some impacts because of the unsettled weather. Drier and perhaps brighter towards the south. Temperatures still not quite as high as they were earlier on in the week, but feeling pleasant enough in any sunshine. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Now, Grand Central train services are suspended between Sunderland and Northallerton because of an incident on the M62 in West Yorkshire. There's a lane closed westbound for repairs between junctions 22 and 21 from Rushworth Moor to Milnrow, causing queues. Delays of up to an hour. Some cancelled trains on the East Coast main line between Doncaster and Grantham after an incident. In Cheshire, the A49 is closed on Tarpley Road at Oakmere after an accident. In Derbyshire, on the A38, there's a lane closed westbound north of Derby for repairs after a lorry caught fire between Little Island and Palm Court Island. Queues back beyond Belper. In Worcestershire, the A442 is closed at Broad Common after an accident. On the A1M in Hertfordshire, there's a lane closed northbound after an accident between junctions 1 and 2 off the M25 with delays in both directions. Train services are suspended between Avonmouth and Severn Beach because of a points failure. And in Berkshire, the A329 is closed north of Wokingham after an accident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Between 1955 and 1989, an average of 55 nuclear tests were conducted across the globe each year. More than 30,000 young British and Commonwealth servicemen served at British test locations in Australia and the Pacific Ocean. But in the years since, those who were involved say they've been ignored and lied to about their exposure to radiation. For decades, Lab Rats International has represented the millions across the world exposed to fallout from the testing programmes and the families who still suffer today from illness and deformities. Last year, the government unveiled the Nuclear Test Medal, recognising the military, civilian and overseas staff and personnel who participated in Britain's nuclear testing programme in the 1950s. But for Lab Rats founder Alan Owen, whose own father was a nuclear test veteran, the work is only just beginning. In September, they launched a legal challenge to the Ministry of Defence to provide the test veterans full medical records, which they say they've been denied access to.
We sit in this bubble as the nuclear test veteran community, fighting against the establishment. And they will say, ministers will go in Parliament and say, all you've got to do is apply for your medical records and they'll give them to you. It just doesn't happen. It's not a reality. They're not there to as easy, as accessible as just applying. They will fight you all the way. They will delay it.
In response, a government spokesperson said, "We are grateful to all service personnel who participated in the British nuclear testing programme, which is why we have formally recognised them with an official medal. Nuclear test veterans who believe they have suffered ill health due to service have the existing and long-standing right to apply for no-fault compensation under the War Pension Scheme. The fight for these veterans and their families lives on because thousands who came before never got the recognition and justice for their service."
Good morning, 9:30 on Wednesday, the 22nd of May. This is Britain's News on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Thanks for joining us. So, the bionic MP, the Conservative MP for South Thanet, Craig McKinley, returns to Parliament for the first time today since his battle with sepsis left him without any hands or feet. We're going to follow his journey all morning.
And the under-pressure former Post Office chief, Paula Venables, is before the public inquiry for the first time this morning. What did she know?
And the turbulent tragedy. 73-year-old granddad Geoffrey Kitchen died yesterday on board a Singapore Airlines flight from London. 6 people remain in a critical condition. Do horror stories like this put you off flying at all?
And inflation has fallen to 2.3%, lowest level in almost 3 years, but not as low as the government and all of us wanted.
Anne Robinson, TV presenter for many years, worth 50 million quid. Do you know what she's going to do with it? Give it to her children before she dies.
Because she wants to